Chapter 1973. Jinshin's unexpected idea stunned everyone present. Even the Divine King was extremely surprised. However, the elders of the Earth Spirit sect who had pleaded on Muku's behalf all beamed with joy. In their eyes, guarding the Tianyuan family for 10,000 years was nothing compared to their own lives. Every single Divine King among them had lived for a very long time. Who knew how many years they had lived? 10,000 years was just too short to them. The sect master of the Earth Spirit sect finally let out a sigh of relief, even though he also felt that it was extremely humiliating for a divine king to guard a clan that only had an overgod for 10,000 years. It was nothing compared to Muku's life. Moreover, this overgod was no ordinary overgod. Instead, he possessed extraordinary battle prowess, a supreme overgod who truly possessed the right to contend with the person who ranked first on the overgod's plaque. Once an overgod like that became a divine king, he would definitely become an expert who stood above the divine king in the future. He might even be able to contend with primordial realm experts with his cultivation as a divine king. Guarding a clan for a supreme overgod like that for 10,000 years was not something to be ashamed of. Elder Muku, stop hesitating. Agree quickly. Many divine king elders, and even the sect master of the Earth Spirit sect, all communicated with Elder Mu secretly. Elder Mu stood on the stage with a pale face. He was dejected as he stared at Jinshin blankly. Naturally, he heard the messages from many elders. However, it was extremely difficult for him, a mighty divine king, to guard a clan for someone else for 10,000 years. Elder Mu stood on the stage, silently for a very long time as he struggled inside. In the end, he slowly turned his head and looked at the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood in the distance, calmly. He did not show any emotions at all. In the end, Elder Mu looked at Jinshin. He stared at this rising star who was only an overgod but possessed battle prowess so great that even he was not his opponent. He sighed helplessly inside and said with some sorrow, "I will guard your Tianyuan family for 10,000 years." It took Muku a lot of effort to say this short sentence. After saying these words, his entire person became dispirited, as if he had lost his soul, and he was listless. "Since the grievances have been resolved, it's time for us to leave. Sang too, let's catch up another day," the Divine King said to the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor clasped his fist towards the Divine King. After a simple greeting, he bid farewell to him. Afterwards, the Divine King and Jinshin boarded the carriage and left under the gazes of the elders and disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. Elder Mu did not leave with them. He would be staying with the Tianyuan family this time, protecting the Tianyuan family for 10,000 years. As a result, he had some matters to deal with in the sect before he left. "Muku, come see me," the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said to Muku before drifting off. Origin energy had turned into mist on the tallest mountain in the Earth Spirit sect. It formed a faint mist that coiled around the peak of the mountain, causing the mountain to become indistinct. It was like it was within a sea of clouds. The mountain was the spiritual symbol of the Earth Spirit sect. At the same time, it was the pillar of the sect. It was the backbone that propped up the sect's prosperity. This was because it was where the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect cultivated. At this moment, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood on the edge of a cliff on the top of the mountain. He stared at the world in the distance, deeply as the wind whistled through the air, ruffling his silver-white hair and clothes. Behind him was the current sect master of the Earth Spirit sect and the dejected Muku. They stood there respectfully. "Muku, do you know why I defeated you?" The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said calmly with his back towards them. However, there was a hint of helplessness in his calm voice. "Originally, I did not understand, but I understood afterwards. It's because the primordial realm expert behind Jinshin is very powerful," said Muku. "Ancestor, Do you know the identity of the primordial realm expert behind Genshin? The sect master asked. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect sighed deeply. I don't know the identity of the primordial realm expert behind Genshin, but that person is not someone our Earth Spirit sect can afford to provoke. She's so powerful that she only needs to raise a hand to destroy our Earth Spirit sect. As he said that, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect could not help but think about what had happened 3 days ago. At that time, he was cultivating in seclusion in his secret room when a beautiful woman in white robes silently appeared in his secret room. If it weren't for the aura that the woman released waking him up, he probably wouldn't have known that a stranger had broken into this secret room that he had set up layers upon layers of formations without his knowledge. Although the woman did not attack him, the pressure she gave off was so powerful that the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect still remembered it like it was yesterday. That pressure was something he would never forget for the rest of his life. In the face of this pressure, he felt that he did not even have the strength to resist. It was as though he was facing a primordial chaos expert and was as weak as an ant. He had no doubt that the woman possessed the terrifying strength to obliterate the Earth Spirit sect with just a raise of her hand. How could his Earth Spirit sect afford to offend such a supreme expert? Whether it was Elder Muku or the current sect master of the Earth Spirit sect, they were both shocked when they heard the ancestor's words. They had heard that there was a primordial realm expert behind Genshin, but they had never thought that the primordial realm expert would possess such terrifying strength, where even the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect feared her so much. Do you understand now? A sliver of bitterness appeared on the ancestor's face. He said helplessly, "We can't afford to offend the person behind Genshin, but our Earth Spirit sect has to maintain our dignity after all. If we directly admit defeat and the news spreads, it'll be bad for our Earth Spirit sect's reputation. That's why we let you fight Genshin and lose to Genshin in public. That way, not only will we be able to give an explanation to Genshin and avoid offending the expert behind Genshin, but we'll also be able to maintain the dignity of our Earth Spirit sect. Although it's not very glorious for a divine king to lose to an overgod, Genshin has already defeated a divine king in the northern region. He already possesses the strength to rank first on the overgod's plaque, so it's not embarrassing for him to lose to a supreme overgod like that. Muku, go pack up. Once you're ready, we'll set off. Protect the Tianyuan family for 10,000 years. Yes, ancestor, Muku replied politely. His heart was filled with warmth. Now he finally understood why his ancestor had told him that he could only lose in the battle against Genshin and not win. As it turned out, Genshin actually had a supreme expert who could easily destroy the Earth Spirit sect behind him. It was no wonder that the ancestor would make a decision like that. After the sect master and Muku left, the ancestor stood on the cliff silently for a while. Afterwards, with a flip of his hand, a piece of jade immediately appeared in his hand. He held the piece of jade and recorded information on it with the senses of his soul. A while later, he suddenly looked into the distance, and with a wave of his hand, he tossed the piece of jade out. Immediately, the piece of jade turned into a white streak of light, shooting off into the distance with unbelievable speed. It vanished in a single instant. Several middle-aged men appeared silently in the depths of the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. They hovered above the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair as they stared down with sunken faces. Below them, the mountains had already collapsed. Rubble had been piled up, and it was a mess. Amidst the rubble, one could clearly see several gigantic figures lying on the ground. Even though these figures were already dead, they still radiated with rather powerful presences. Every single one of them possessed the strength of a late divine king when they were alive. Who is it? Who was the culprit? Who is it that stole this emperor's great Tao flower? A middle-aged man stood at the very front in purplish golden robes. He was dignified as he stared down coldly as he spoke through gritted teeth. The middle-aged man was the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Ninth Prince, I've already sent people to investigate, but this is related to a primordial realm expert, after all. It'll take some time to find out anything. However, I believe we'll find some clues very soon. A divine king behind the Ninth Prince said carefully. Hurry up and investigate. I want to know the identity of this primordial realm expert as soon as possible. Humph. So what if you're a primordial realm expert to steal my flower of ways? The Ninth Prince's eyes were cold. His cultivation had already reached the peak of the divine king. He was only a step away from the primordial realm. Originally, he could have crossed this step easily with the flower of ways. It would not have taken him too much time. However, now that the flower of ways had been stolen, the time he needed to break through to the primordial realm would be extended indefinitely. At this moment, a white piece of jade tore through the air and hovered in front of the Ninth Prince. The Ninth Prince stared the jade, slipped calmly, and slowly caught it. He said, "This item should have come from a primordial realm expert, but there are only a few primordial realm experts in the Heavenly Moon Empire." Looking at the direction the jade slip came from, it should have come from the person from the Earth Spirit sect. Ninth Prince, does the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect know anything about the jade slip? A person behind the Ninth Prince asked. I hope so, the Ninth Prince said coldly. He immediately sent the senses of his soul into the jade slip. Very soon, he read through the contents of the jade slip. A cold light flashed through his eyes, and he crushed the jade slip to pieces. He said emotionlessly, "Let's go," to the Dong and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianqin directly returned to the Tianyuan family. As soon as he returned, he could clearly sense that the atmosphere of the entire clan had become extraordinarily lively. It was enveloped by a heavy atmosphere of joy. Patriarch, you've finally returned. Shiyu has successfully broken through and become an over-god. Mo Ling saw Jianqin from afar and immediately ran overexcitedly. The Tianyuan family had gained an over-god. This was definitely something worth celebrating. This was because over-gods were still the rulers of a province in the current divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shiyu. Jianqin could not help but think of the embroidered box he had given to Princess Tai, and when he mentioned Shiyu. Chapter 1974. Shiyu, congratulations on successfully becoming an over-god. From today onwards, you can be regarded as a renowned expert in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianqin smiled happily when he saw Shiyu. He congratulated her sincerely from the bottom of his heart. There were not a lot of over-gods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, and a few of them had died during the battle against the heavenly demon religion. As a result, there were even fewer over-gods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shiyu had successfully broken through and become an over-god under these circumstances, so she naturally possessed an extremely great status in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shiyu wore a luxurious white dress. Her glossy black hair had been specially styled as well. It was tied up in a beautiful knot behind her head. At this moment, she no longer looked like a chivalrous woman like before. Instead, she gave off the feeling of a lady from a noble family, a young miss from a wealthy family. It's all thanks to the patriarch's nurturing that I was able to become an over-god in such a short amount of time. Shiyu bowed slightly. Her voice was gentle and extremely pleasant. The light in her eyes flickered as she stared at Jianqin. Shiyu's talent was indeed very great. With the talent she had displayed, there was no need for her to cultivate for so long to become an over-god. She could have done it in an even shorter amount of time. However, the Mo clan in the past was just too weak. They were only a god clan, so they did not possess the resources and heritage to nurture a prodigy like Shiyu. As a result, Shiyu had only reached godhood after 2,000 years of cultivation in the Mo clan. Only when she met Jianqin and received Jianqin's full nurturing, along with a large number of divine crystals and his comprehension of the laws of the sword, did she use strength skyrocket. She went from a deity to an over-god in such a short amount of time. Shiyu's talent is no weaker than the supreme prodigies of large sects. Jianchen could not help but sigh in amazement. Over the past few days, he could be considered to have met quite a number of geniuses from the ancient dynasties. He more or less had some understanding of these geniuses. Now that he compared Shiyu to these so-called prodigies, he discovered that Shiyu was actually much more powerful than them. Jianchen looked at Shiyu with some mixed feelings as well. He said, "Shiyu, with your talent, remaining in the Tianyuan family is just wasting your potential. The current Tianyuan family doesn't have the conditions to nurture you properly. Remaining here will only hinder your future. Only those peak sects of eternal empires can allow you to stand even higher and go further." "Are you chasing me away?" Shiyu stared at Jianchen with some gloominess and disappointment. Jianchen shook his head and sighed gently. "I have no intentions of chasing you away. I'm just thinking for you. I hope you can go even further on your path of cultivation, or even become an expert who stands at the apex of the Saints' world." The original patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, looked at Shiyu and sighed inside. He said, the patriarch is right. You can consider whether you want to listen to the patriarch and join some peak sections." Mo Xingfeng had basically watched Shiyu grow up. No one understood her better than him, which made him feel very helpless. Now, he did hope that Shiyu could leave the Tianyuan family temporarily and join a peak sect in an ancient empire. That would be better for her. "No, I can't let Sister Shiyu go. Sister Shiyu, please don't leave me. I really don't want to be separated from Sister Shiyu." At this moment, Mo Yen ran over as well. She only grabbed Shiyu's arm as she spoke with great reluctance. Afterwards, she waved her fist at Jianchen and said fiercely, "Patriarch Jianchen, you can't let Sister Shiyu go, or I definitely won't forgive you." Jianchen smiled and looked at Mo Yen rather helplessly. Although Mo Yen was older than him, Jianchen had already begun to treat her as his own sister. He cared for her from the bottom of his heart. However, Jianchen felt troubled as soon as he mentioned Mo Yan's cultivation. The girl hated cultivation very much. She would throw a tantrum as soon as cultivation was mentioned. As a result, her cultivation basically did not advance at all in all these years. She remained at sainthood. "Thank you for your concern, Patriarch. However, I have no interest in joining those large sections. Moreover, you still haven't joined any sects, right? Your strength is still increasing extremely rapidly. As a result, I believe in myself. Even if I don't join those large sects, I'll still become an expert in the future," Shiyu said firmly. Jianchen was helpless when he saw how determined Shiyu was. He could only sigh gently inside and turn around to leave. Unknowingly, Jianchen had already entered the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan family. The forbidden grounds were enveloped by a powerful formation. The number of people in the Tianyuan family who had the right to enter the forbidden grounds could be counted on one hand. Jianchen could not help but think of Shangguan as he stood in the forbidden grounds. Originally, Shangguan should have been cultivating in seclusion here, waiting for his triumphant return. However, he had never thought that his trip to the northern region would lead to his parting with Shangguan May I ask if you've already arrived at the Taoist sect of Divine Sound? Have you been well there? You have to be well in the Taoist sect of Divine Sound and wait for me to pick you up. Although I don't know where the Skyfar plane is or how far it is from the Cloud plane, I will definitely go there." Jianchen clenched his fists tightly as his gaze became extremely determined. However, at this moment, Jianchen's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he suddenly looked back. A beautiful figure stood behind him, staring at Jianchen calmly. "Kea, it's you." Jianchen was surprised. He stared at Kea in shock as his heart was in turmoil. This was because he had actually failed to sense Kea's approach earlier. He did not even know when Kea had appeared behind him or how long she had been standing there. Jianchen immediately focused his attention and studied Kea carefully. He immediately gasped when he saw her. Disbelief filled his face as his heart churned. "Kea, your cultivation," Jianqin said in shock. At that moment, he even began to doubt whether what he was seeing was real. This was because he discovered that Kea's strength had directly risen to late over God in such a short amount of time. Jianqin felt like he was dreaming. After all, how long had Kea been awake? When she had just woken up, she was only a holy emperor, yet she had become a late over God now. Jianqin was utterly dumbfounded by how quickly her strength increased. He was completely unable to catch up. Probably only the reincarnated primordial realm expert, Fairy Haoyue, could match Kea's cultivation speed. "Jianqin, thank you for the monster core and the large number of divine crystals you gave me. It's exactly because of these cultivation items that my cultivation has been able to increase so quickly," Kea said to Jianqin. From how calm she was, it was as if she had no idea just how great of an uproar her rapid cultivation would cause in the saint's world. "You can increase your cultivation by absorbing a large number of divine crystals, but your comprehension of the laws of the world—" Jianqin hesitated. Kea had surprised him far too much. A sliver of confusion appeared in Kea's eyes. She said, "I don't know what's going on either. My comprehension of the laws of the world seems to be especially easy. I can always grasp the power of laws without using any effort at all. I've already grasped 3 laws now, and I seem to absorb the energy from divine crystals hundreds of times faster than other people." As she said that, Kea immediately used the power of laws with a thought. Immediately, 3 different laws condensed. Chapter 1975. Jianqin looked at Kea with extremely mixed feelings. Kea had shocked him far, far too much, and many things could not be explained with common sense. The rate at which her strength increased was unbelievable as well. She cultivated so quickly and comprehended laws so easily, which even made Jianqin wonder whether Kea was the reincarnation of a supreme expert. This was because only Fairy Haoyue, a primordial realm expert who had retained all her memories, could increase her strength so quickly. "Kea, although your cultivation path has been smooth without any exaggeration, where you haven't encountered any bottlenecks at all, I still have to suggest that you don't increase your cultivation too quickly, just in case your foundation becomes unstable." Jianqin stared at Kea and said sternly. After all, Kea was not Fairy Haoyue. Jianqin became slightly worried when he saw how quickly she cultivated. He was worried that Kea's rapid cultivation would leave behind extremely great problems that would affect her future. She might even be doomed in the end. "Yeah, I understand that as well. As a result, I don't plan on cultivating in the next few days. I'll focus all of my efforts on consolidating my cultivation, just in case I end up leaving behind any problems," Jianqin agreed. After a moment of hesitation, he stared at Jianqin with shining eyes and said rather eagerly, "Jianqin, although I've reached late over God, all I have is strength. I haven't fought anyone yet, so I don't know just how powerful I am right now. Why don't we spar and test my current battle prowess?" "All right. The Saints' world is different from the Tianyuan continent. You didn't have much battle experience back on the Tianyuan continent, so you need to properly temper yourself now that you've come to the Saints' world. Moreover, you've gained so much strength in such a short amount of time. You also need to experience many battles before you can use it with familiarity." Jianqin agreed in an extremely straightforward manner before leaving the Tianyuan family with Kea. As Kaya was a late over god now, the shockwaves from their battle would not be something the Dong and province could endure. As a result, Jianqin chose a desolate mountain range far away from the provincial city that was devoid of people. Jianqin hovered above the mountain range as he stared at Kea calmly. He said, "Kea, go ahead." "Jianqin, be careful," Jianqin said sternly. With that, her presence suddenly changed. At the same time, the temperature in the surroundings suddenly skyrocketed. Flames surged around Kea, blazing in the air. They gave off terrifying heat, dyeing the surroundings red. The thick layer of clouds in the sky directly dispersed at that moment, directly vaporized by the terrifying heat from the flames around Kea. Jianchen could not help but become rather stern as he stared at the laws of fire around Kea. He thought strange. Kea's laws of fire seemed to be slightly different from the laws of fire that other people comprehend. It seems like the laws of fire that Kea grasps are even purer than the laws of fire that other late overgods comprehend. If the laws of fire that other overgods comprehend contain some impurities, Kea's laws of fire are extremely pure. There are no impurities at all. Jianchen felt extremely surprised once again. Kea was truly different from ordinary people. At this moment, Kea struck out. The flames around her surged as she controlled an endless sea of fire. She radiated with terrifying heat as she shot towards Jianchen with lightning speed. Her presence was even more shocking, surging into the clouds and shaking up the surroundings. She seemed like a goddess of war. She slapped out with her hand, and the endless sea of flames behind her danced with her palm. The majestic flames gathered in an instant, compressed into the size of a palm, and emitted a dazzling light that was like the sun, making people not dare to look at it directly. A gleam of light flashed through Jianchen's eyes, and he became extremely stern. He did not use the startling rainbow sword. Instead, he struck out with his hand as well. Chaotic force accompanied his palm strike, giving off a destructive presence. The laws of the sword coiled around his palm strike as well, causing it to be black and white. Boom! The two palms collided, erupting with a heavy sound. Terrifying ripples of energy shot out in all directions, and the mountains beneath their feet all exploded. Dust filled the air. Jianchen and Kea remained as still as mountains in the air. Their palms remained pressed together, and one of them shone with black and white light. Chaotic force and sword light surged. The other person's hand was as dazzling as the sun, like a miniature sun that had been shrunk countless times. It was dazzling and resplendent, radiating with terrifying heat. The surrounding space was dyed red, as if the air was burning. Jianchen shivered inside. Even though he had only used 70% of his strength in that strike, Kea was still able to match him, which surprised him greatly. However, in the next moment, his hand changed. It turned into a sword and shot out a 3-inch-long streak of light, which he directly slashed towards Kea's hand. Even though the sword chi had been shot out from Jianchen's fingers, Jianchen had already used 80% of his strength, causing the sword chi to be able to pierce through space. The laws of fire that had been compressed by Kea to a high degree was directly cut in half by Jianchen. However, the laws of fire that had been cut in half by Jianchen did not disperse because of that. Instead, they turned into 2 streaks of red light and shot towards Jianchen with unbelievable speed. At the same time, Kea launched a second palm strike. His hand was enveloped in flames, and it shot towards Jianchen with strands of heavenly might. Immediately, Jianchen felt like a mysterious power had permeated his surroundings. It made him feel like he had become bogged down, making his movements abnormally slow. Jianchen's eyes narrowed. Kea's attack had completely caught him off guard. Moreover, through the 2 clashes, he discovered that Kea's usage of the laws of fire had already reached perfection. He did not seem like a newbie who had just comprehended the power of laws at all. Moreover, he could clearly sense that Kea's move seemed to contain some sort of mystery. He was clearly attacking casually, but he seemed to be in harmony with the world. It was as if every single move and strike was a battle skill, so they were extremely powerful. In the blink of an eye, when the 2 strands of laws of fire shot towards Jianchen, Jianchen extended a finger at the same time. 2 strands of sword chi shot out from between his fingers, blocking the 2 strands of laws of fire. Afterwards, he brought his hands together, and chaotic force surged between his palms. A black strand of sword chi that was a meter long silently condensed, stabbing out with a devastating presence. Although Jianchen and Kea were sparring to test Kea's strength, Their battle was extremely intense. Booms rang through the surroundings as the laws of the sword and the laws of fire intersected in the air, clashing time and time again. The mountains below had already been reduced to a mess. The few specks of green in the mountains had already been reduced to ashes by the terrifying heat. As a matter of fact, some of the tough rocks had even been reduced to a red liquid in just a few seconds when some of the sparks fell. Genshin's strength had increased from the initial 70% to 80%. However, when Kea used the laws of destruction, he used both the laws of destruction and the laws of fire at the same time, forcing Genshin to use 90% of his strength. He had even used the startling rainbow sword. After Kea used the laws of destruction, the battle prowess he displayed had exceeded the range of late over-gods. He had basically taken a step into the Divine King's domain. It was not that the laws of destruction were too powerful. Purely in terms of ranking, the laws of destruction were only on par with the laws of the sword. However, in Kea's hands, the laws of destruction were like the laws of fire, able to unleash extraordinary might. It was as if Kea possessed an unimaginable understanding and control over both the laws of fire and the laws of destruction, allowing him to unleash power beyond his current level of cultivation. Genshin even suspected that, even though they were both over gods, his understanding and control over the laws of the sword was not as good as Kea's. This was because Kea's usage of the laws of fire and the laws of destruction had reached a level of perfection in Genshin's eyes. It was unbelievable. Is Kea born with the laws of destruction and the laws of fire? Genshin even wondered. However, at this moment, darkness descended, and the surroundings suddenly darkened. A huge, demonic cloud permeated the surroundings, blotting out the sun and plunging the barren mountains into darkness. Genshin, you sure are bold. You've offended my heavenly demon religion. Yet you don't hide in the imperial capital and get Ping Tian to protect you. Instead, you've come to the wilderness. A cold voice filled with killing intent rang out in the surroundings as the darkness spread. Genshin and Kea both stopped their sparring due to the sudden development. In particular, when the rather familiar voice rang out, Genshin's face changed drastically. Huayan. Genshin growled as he became extremely stern. Without any hesitation, he pushed Kea far away and called out, "Run!" Genshin had never thought that Huayan, one of the 3 vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion, would actually come for him personally. His heart immediately sank. This was a primordial realm expert. With his current strength, he did not even have the ability to flee before someone like that. Kea did not flee. She arrived before Genshin again and raised her head, looking at the sky. Her gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the dark clouds and see the figures hidden within. Chapter 1976. Kea shook his head calmly when he saw how worried Genshin was. He said seriously, "I'm not leaving. If I'm leaving, you should leave first. You saved my life. So how can I flee alone now that you're in danger?" Kea's indifferent voice was filled with determination. Why are you so stupid? This is a primordial realm expert. He's so powerful that even the 2 of us together can't fend him off. He's specially come for me, so it has nothing to do with you. If you leave, he might not chase after you. But if you stay, you'll just lose your life for nothing, Genshin said in a hurry, hoping to stop Kea from leaving. He knew just how great the difference between him and a primordial realm expert was. It was a chasm, so he had already given up on the thought of fleeing before such an expert. This was because he knew that even if he used the linear lightning release, he would not be able to escape from a primordial realm expert. Hee Genshin, you're about to die, yet you're still in the mood to worry about others. It looks like this girl's status in your heart is quite high. Whatever. If that's the case, I'll kill the 2 of you together. Why and sneer rang out from outer space, and it boomed through the surroundings like thunder. With that, the demonic clouds in the sky surged violently, condensing into a huge hand in a single instance. It radiated with a terrifying presence that could destroy the world. At the same time, the two remaining vice leaders sat within a hall in the headquarters of the heavenly demon religion. Black mist permeated their surroundings, completely obscuring their figures. Huayan really can't help himself and has moved against Jianqin. An old voice rang out. The vice leader, referred to as Elder Sen, had spoken. There was some helplessness in his voice. I knew it would be like this. Huayan has always been narrow-minded and vengeful. Not only did Jianqin protect the successor of Duanmu, who had grievances with Huayan in the past, but he had also captured Yaxilian a while ago and used her to threaten Huayan, forcing Huayan into an extremely passive situation. In the end, he could only agree to the half-month ceasefire that the Divine King had proposed. This matter definitely had something to do with Jianqin, so how could Huayan not resent him? Moreover, this kid called Jianqin really does possess impressive talent. If he successfully matures, he'll definitely become a peak expert in the future. As a result, Huayan needs to take action and nip him in the bud. Otherwise, once Jianqin truly becomes powerful, Huayan will be in trouble, said the vice leader, Yihuaiwe. I don't care about Jianqin's life or death. However, the response of the higher-ups makes me feel like this matter is not as simple as it seems on the surface. There's definitely something we don't know about hidden within. I even suspect that the disappearance of the blood and soul beads was purposefully arranged by the higher-ups. If all of this really was arranged by the higher-ups, I'm worried that Huayan's actions against Jianqin will ruin the plans of the higher-ups unintentionally. The consequences are not something we can bear, Elder Sun said with some worry. Elder Sun, we've already warned Huayan before. He's the one who insists on doing things his own way. If his actions really do ruin the plans of the higher-ups, it'll be Huayan's responsibility alone. It has nothing to do with the two of us, said Yihuaiwe. Although the three vice leaders differed in strength, their statuses were the same. None of them could control the other. Since Huayan insisted on doing things his own way, the two of them had no right to interfere. You're right. Anyway, we can't take part in this matter. Let's just watch how it develops, Elderson nodded. The vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan, hovered in the demonic clouds within the divine kingdom of Pingtian. As he pressed down gently with his hand, the huge hand condensed from the clouds immediately slammed down towards Jianqin and Kea with an extremely terrifying pressure. The strike of a primordial realm expert was extremely powerful. As the hand descended, the terrifying pressure directly caused the mountains below to rumble heavily. Before the hand had even landed, the rocks below were already unable to endure it and had all exploded. As for Jianqin and Kea, they were completely immobilized by the hand. It was as if their entire bodies had been trapped. Jianqin became extremely stern as he stared at the hand that slowly descended. Even though he knew he would not be able to escape today, he would not just sit there and wait for death. In the next moment, two finger-sized strands of profound sword chi hovered above his head. They radiated with surging sword chi. At this moment, the only thing he could use was the profound sword chi. Once the fusion of the twin swords was exposed before a primordial realm expert, the chances of his identity being exposed would be far too great. At that time, it would not just be him and Kea that would die. Even the Tianyuan family would be doomed. The laws of creation, destruction, and fire revolved around Kea as her presence rapidly soared. Vaguely, the mysteries of ways seemed to revolve around her. Clearly, she was the same as Jianqin. She wanted to fight to the death. Swish, swish. Two whizzing sounds rang out as two streaks of dazzling white light tore through the sky. Along the way, they exuded towering sword chi as they charged with an indomitable momentum towards the palm formed from the boundless black clouds in the sky. Jianqin struck out first, shooting out two strands of profound sword chi at the same time. However, the power of his soul was basically depleted as soon as he shot out the two strands of profound sword chi. Immediately he felt dizzy. Afterwards, Kea struck out as well. She formed seals with her hands as the laws of creation, destruction, and fire danced around her fingertips. In the end, they condensed into a complicated, profound inscription. It possessed endless mysteries as it shot into the sky with the presence of ways. When Genshin's 2 strands of profound sword chi came in contact with the hand condensed from demonic aura, the profound sword chi directly shot into the hand and melted a 10-meter wide hole in it. However, that was all. The profound sword chi was unable to pierce the hand, let alone destroy it. It only managed to melt a 10-meter wide hole before the 2 strands of profound sword chi dispersed. Boom! However, in the next moment, there was a deafening rumble. Kea's inscription, condensed from the power of 3 laws, received the attack. Kea's usage of laws had reached a level of mastery, where it had even surpassed Genshin's usage of the laws of the sword. As a result, her attack with the power of 3 laws was naturally extraordinary. However, she was only an overgod after all. She was just too far away from the primordial realm. As a result, the inscriptions she condensed from the laws of creation, destruction, and fire were still unable to block a casual strike from Huai, and Kea's inscription collapsed with a boom, while the huge hand condensed from demonic aura did not slow down at all. It enveloped Genshin and Kea with devastating power. Just when Genshin and Kea were about to face death, a clear thrum of a sword suddenly rang out. A huge, snow-white sword chi ripped through space, shooting over from afar like it had teleported. Wherever the sword chi passed by, origin energy would tremble, and space would be ripped open. It left behind an extremely thin, black crack in space, like a line being drawn in the sky. The sword chi had actually directly ripped through space. This was the Saint's world. Space was extremely tough. Even when the Divine King fought, he could only make space ripple slightly. Chapter 1977. Boom! Amidst the deafening roar, the sword chi unleashed a terrifying might. It directly collided with the palm formed from endless demonic aura in the sky. A terrifying energy shockwave erupted, flattening the mountain range, causing the ground below to sink and crack. The ripples of energy were truly terrifying. Even with Genshin and Kea's strength, they were unable to endure it. They were pushed back again and again by the ripples of energy. If it were not for the fact that the ripples of energy had only been created by a casual attack from a primordial realm expert, and if it were not for the fact that the sword chi had not dispersed after destroying the hand condensed from demonic aura, nullifying most of the storm of energy that shot towards Genshin and Kea, the 2 of them probably would not have been able to remain unscathed before the terrifying storm of energy. They would definitely have been injured. Swish! The sound of something shooting through the air rang out once again. After destroying the hand condensed from demonic aura, the sword chi continued to radiate with shocking might, shooting towards the demonic clouds with extremely sharp sword chi. The sword chi was resplendent as it blossomed with light. It was as intense as the sun as it illuminated the entire sky, causing the black clouds in the sky to turn into white clouds in an instant. Humph! A cold snort rang out from the demonic clouds. Primordial realm laws descended from the demonic clouds, turning into a chain that shot out like a bolt of lightning. It collided with the sword chi. When the 2 collided, another deafening boom rang out. Just the terrifying sound waves caused the ground to shake violently. It was as if the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian was experiencing an earthquake. As for this desolate mountain that had already become a complete mess, not only had all the mountain rocks turned into ashes, even the ground below had collapsed in large areas, forming a huge black abyss. Sword immortal! Genshin was surprised when he sensed the power of the sword chi. The owner of the sword chi had already reached the 3rd realm of the Way of the Sword, the sword immortal. Genshin subconsciously looked behind him. He saw a dignified, middle-aged man in 9 dragon robes walk over. He was clearly extremely far away, where even with Genshin's vision, he was still extremely blurry. However, in the next moment, he crossed the distance with just a single step, directly appearing before Genshin. He stared at the figure hidden in the demonic clouds coldly. The middle-aged man was the Divine King. Huayan, you've overstepped your boundaries. The Divine King's long hair fluttered in the wind as he stood before Genshin in his dragon robes. He stared at Huai and in a dignified manner as he gave off the presence of a ruler. In particular, the laws of the sword revolved around him. The Divine King is actually an expert who has comprehended the laws of the sword. Genshin was secretly surprised. He was extremely surprised. The laws of the sword were one of the laws with the greatest offensive power. A primordial realm expert who had comprehended the laws of the sword would definitely possess battle prowess much greater than primordial realm experts who had comprehended some weaker laws. However, although Genshin had interacted with the Divine King for some time now, he had no idea what kind of law the Divine King had comprehended. Although the Divine King had used the power of the laws of the primordial realm in the battle between the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian and the Heavenly Demon Religion, the laws of the primordial realm were hazy. It was a pure power, so it was impossible to tell which laws it was. Only today did Genshin learn that the Divine King was actually an expert who had comprehended the laws of the sword. Haha, the cloud plane may be large, but I can go wherever I want. How can I overstep my boundaries? Huai's voice rang out from the demonic clouds. Afterwards, he slowly emerged from the clouds. However, he was not alone. 3 figures hovered quietly behind him. The presences they gave off had all reached the level of the Divine King. Pingtian, I expected you to appear a long time ago. However, do you really think you can protect yourself just because you've just reached the primordial realm? Huayan sneered before saying to the 3 people behind him, Go, capture Genshin and that woman. Yes, sir. The 3 Divine King experts behind Huai and replied together. Afterwards, they moved towards Genshin and Kea at the same time. Leave quickly. The Divine King called out to Genshin. With a wave of his hand, the laws of the primordial realm descended. Dazzling sword chi turned into a huge streak of light, sweeping towards the 3 Divine King experts with devastating power. An attack from a primordial realm expert was terrifying. Even though the 3 Divine Kings were not weak, having reached the late Divine King level, they were not supreme Divine Kings like the Divine King after all. As a result, the 3 of them shivered when they faced a casual attack from the Divine King. The presence of death approached them as if the end of the world had arrived. Huaiyan appeared before the 3 of them like he had teleported. He blocked the Divine King's attack with composure and said, Pingtian, our battle last time still hasn't ended. Why don't we fight again in outer space? With that, Huayan did not wait for the Divine King's agreement. He directly attacked the Divine King. The might of Huaiyan's attack this time was simply like the difference between heaven and earth when compared to before. He had only struck out casually before. He did not use the laws of the primordial realm. He had only used a hand condensed from demonic aura to deal with Genshin. This was because he knew that the Divine King would definitely secretly protect Genshin. As a result, he had only struck out earlier to draw the Divine King out and prevent the Divine King from launching a sneak attack at a crucial moment. Now that the Divine King had appeared, he no longer feared him. He attacked with his full strength right from the start. The Divine King was stern. Huaiyan's attack was just too powerful. If he blocked it, the shock waves would be enough to cause great damage to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. With no other choice, he could only charge into the sky and fly towards outer space. Huaiyan looked at the Divine King's figure. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Afterwards, he shot into the sky as well, chasing after the Divine King. On the other side, Genshin and Kea had already fled into the distance as quickly as they could. Behind them, the 3 Divine King pursued with lightning speed. As the 2 of them were late over gods, they were naturally slower than the three late god kings. As a result, the distance between them rapidly shrank. Jianqin and Kea did not flee towards the Tianyuan family. Instead, they left the Tianyuan family and fled towards the outskirts of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. With the Tianyuan family's current strength, it was impossible for them to stop the three divine kings from the heavenly demon religion. Even with the divine king-level formations protecting the Tianyuan family, it was impossible for them to stop the three late divine kings, even with Mu Ku. As a result, if they fled back to the Tianyuan family, it would only bring disaster to the clan. The power of Jianqin's soul had basically been depleted when he used the 2 strands of profound sword qi. Right now, he was recovering the power of his soul with the soul recovery pills he had purchased from the Xiandao dynasty. As a result, it was basically Kea who carried him as they fled. However, Kea used techniques that shocked Jianqin once again. She had used some kind of secret technique that seemed to have fused with the world, allowing her to move unbelievably fast. For a moment, the 3 divine king actually struggled to catch up to her. You won't be able to escape. It's best if you surrender obediently. One of the divine kings from the heavenly demon religion called out from behind. He radiated with a tremendous, terrifying pressure. He formed a seal with one hand before suddenly extending a finger. With that, the space in a range of 10 kilometers suddenly shook. It actually froze at that moment. Jianqin and Kea were currently in the frozen space. Immediately, the 2 of them felt like a mysterious power wanted to imprison their bodies, making them feel like they were in a swamp. Their movements became abnormally sluggish, and their speed of escape plummeted. They were less than 10 kilometers away from each other. As soon as Jianqin and Kea slowed down, the 3 divine kings immediately caught up. They struck out at the same time. 2 of them targeted Jianqin, while the remaining 1 dealt with Kea. Immediately, terrifying ripples of energy shook up the surroundings. The 3 late divine kings unleashed their might. Even though it was not as spectacular as a primordial realm expert, it was still shocking. Jianqin bellowed out at the sky. He wielded the startling rainbow sword as battle intent surged from him. He equipped the damaged armor as well. He swung his sword and shot out 2 strands of golden sword qi. Even though the power of his soul had not recovered yet, preventing him from using the profound sword qi, he still possessed some battle prowess at the very least. On the other side, Kea struck out as well. She was extremely stern as the power of the laws of creation, destruction, and fire revolved around her. As she moved her hands, the power of the 3 laws condensed into 3 swords that suddenly shot out. The divine king who had attacked Kea raised an eyebrow in surprise. He murmured, These laws are rather strange. The divine king of the heavenly demon religion had also sensed that the laws Kea used seemed to be different from ordinary people's. However, before he could think too much about it, their attacks collided heavily with a boom. Spurt! Kea vomited a mouthful of blood as she was blown far away like a broken kite. Even though the laws she grasped were different from ordinary people, and she had used 3 laws at the same time, which was extremely shocking, she was only a late overgod in the end. The difference between her and the late divine king was just too great. The difference was so great that even with 3 laws, she was unable to make up for it. At the same time, Jianqin fought against the 2 divine kings. In just a single clash, he vomited a large amount of blood and organs as he was blown away like Kea. The startling rainbow sword in his hand had dimmed as well. A tiny crack had even appeared on the spine of the sword, spreading across the entire blade. The late divine king was just too powerful, and the 2 of them had struck out together. Even with the protection of his god artifact armor, Jianqin was unable to endure it. He became extremely heavily injured. Of course, most importantly, his god artifact armor had only been repaired on the surface, making it seem like it was in perfect condition. In reality, it was unable to unleash the defenses of a god artifact at all. Jianqin constantly vomited blood as he was blown away. Every single mouthful of blood contained bits of organs. If he faced the early Divine King, he could still put up a fight and emerge victorious. However, once he faced the late Divine King, he was unable to fight back at all. The difference between the late Divine King and the early Divine King was just too great. At this moment, Kea caught up to Jianqin with a pale face and a sliver of blood on her lips. She grabbed Jianqin and fled into the distance with gritted teeth without any hesitation. Chapter 1978. Jianqin coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood as he coldly glanced at the three Divine King in hot pursuit. Afterwards, he wrapped his left arm around Kea's waist and formed a seal with his right hand. He used the linear lightning release. Kea immediately stiffened when Jianqin wrapped his arm around her waist. She looked at Jianqin with mixed feelings. In her memory, other than her own father, no other man had ever touched her delicate body like this. In addition, in the depths of her heart, she also had an extremely strong resistance to her body being so intimately touched by a man. At the same time, the resistance in her heart grew stronger and stronger. It was as if there was a voice constantly reminding her, almost shaking her will and making her resist Jianchen's actions. However, before Kea could think too much, she suddenly felt her body sink. Her surroundings blurred in a single moment. Everything around her turned into hazy streaks of light that flashed past her eyes. Jianqin had already used the linear lightning release. He and Kea were both wrapped in light as they turned into bolts of lightning, shooting off into the distance with unbelievable speed. Using the phrase 1,000 kilometers in a single instant was not enough to describe their speed. It was 10,000 kilometers in a single instant, or even several tens of thousand kilometers. The three Divine King from the heavenly demon religion narrowed their eyes. Jianqin and Kea were so fast that all three of them became stunned. Their speed had basically surpassed the limits of what the naked eye could see. Only the senses of the soul could capture them. Chase them! We can't let them get away. One of the Divine Kings bellowed out and immediately used a secret technique with the other two. Their speed suddenly increased as well, turning into three blurs as they pursued. Jianchen's linear lightning release was very fast, but the duration of the linear lightning release was just too short. It was impossible for him to exceed the range of the senses of a God King's soul in such a short amount of time. As a result, even though Jianqin and Kea had used the linear lightning release to escape from the sight of the three Divine Kings, they were still within the range of their senses. Over 100,000 kilometers away, the light around Jianqin and Kea gradually vanished. The terrifying speed from the linear lightning release also returned to normal. Behind the two of them, the three Divine Kings from the heavenly demon religion had already vanished. However, the two of them understood that they had not shaken off the three Divine Kings. As a matter of fact, they could even clearly sense that three extremely powerful presences were pursuing them from afar. With their speed, they would catch up to them in just a few seconds. Jianqin, what do we do now? Kea broke free from Jianqin's arm without leaving a trace as he asked in worry. Go. Just when Jianqin wanted to say something, he aggravated his wounds. He began to cough violently and vomited a few more mouthfuls of blood and organs. Even though he had only clashed with the two Divine Kings once, they were still late Divine Kings. Jianqin was extremely injured from that clash. If it were not for his chaotic body, he probably would have collapsed long ago. Jianqin, how are you? Heal up first. Let me take care of you, Kea said in concern. Jianqin shook his head and silently circulated his chaotic force to heal. At the same time, he swallowed a large number of healing pills and several soul recovery pills to recover the power of the soul. Only then did he say with great difficulty, in a rather weak voice, "You're not as fast as them. Right now, we only have a chance of escaping if I use my sword technique to take you with me. As long as we reach the divine kingdom of Qingyang, we'll be able to shake them off. Let's go." With that, Genshin wrapped his left arm around Keia's waist again. He formed a seal with his right hand and continued to use the linear lightning release. Now that they were in danger, he could no longer care about the concept of physical contact between men and women. Escaping from the pursuit of the three divine kings was more important than anything else. Keia's feelings were extremely mixed. She would feel extremely conflicted whenever she came into close contact with Genshin. However, as soon as she thought about the danger she and Genshin were facing, she could only suppress the conflict in her heart helplessly. Swish! Under Keia's mixed feelings, she and Genshin were enveloped by a streak of light once more. They shot off with lightning-like speed, crossing several tens of thousand kilometers in a single instant. They moved extremely quickly. Even late divine kings would struggle to catch up to them with such speed. Even though the three divine kings from the heavenly demon religion had used secret techniques to increase their speed, they were still unable to travel several tens of thousand kilometers in a single instant. However, there was a flaw to Genshin's linear lightning release as well, which was that it could not be maintained for long periods of time. It was not like the three divine kings behind them who could maintain their current speed for extended periods of time. As a result, every time Genshin stopped using the linear lightning release, the distance between the two of them would be shortened once more. This forced Genshin to constantly use the linear lightning release. Fortunately, the depletion of his chaotic force was extremely slow, and ever since he started cultivating the chaotic body, he had never run out of chaotic force due to prolonged battles. Otherwise, he probably would not have been able to sustain the pursuit of the three late divine kings with his cultivation as a late overgod if he had to use the linear lightning release so frequently. The land and endless mountains and rivers receded rapidly. As the two parties pursued, they left the territory of the divine kingdom of Pingtian very soon and entered the divine kingdom of Qingyang. As they fled, Genshin's wounds rapidly healed under the terrifying regeneration of the chaotic body. Even though he focused all of his attention on fleeing, his wounds did not worsen at all. Instead, they gradually improved. Keia's wounds had visibly improved after ingesting the healing pills. Genshin did not slow down at all. After entering the divine kingdom of Qingyang, he quickly determined his location before using the linear lightning release to flee again. Behind them, the three divine kings from the heavenly demon religion pursued relentlessly. They maintained a distance of several tens of thousand kilometers the entire time. Although the distance seemed to be very far, for experts like them, it was only a matter of 2 or 3 breaths. As a result, Genshin did not dare to relax at all. Before long, Genshin arrived in a barren mountain range within the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He brought Keia to a hidden valley with great familiarity. He directly shot a strand of sword chi at a smooth stone wall. With a boom, the stone wall was smashed open, revealing a cave hidden within. With a flash, Genshin had already entered the gloomy cave with Keia. They arrived at the end of the cave as quickly as possible. There was an intact teleportation formation on the ground here. At the same time, a terrifying pressure was transmitted over, causing the mountains to tremble. As soon as Genshin and Keia slowed down, the three divine kings immediately caught up. They moved extremely quickly, to the point where they could be seen as tiny specks on the horizon. Genshin was stern. He immediately brought Keia to the teleportation formation. With a wave of his hand, he tossed out several divine crystals to activate the formation. Under a powerful flash of white light, the two of them completely vanished. However, just when Genshin was about to be teleported away, he suddenly tossed out a fist-sized, transparent crystal. Afterwards, when he and Keia completely vanished from the formation, the crystal produced a great sound and loudly exploded. Not only did it completely destroy the teleportation formation on the ground, but it also directly collapsed the entire cave. The three divine kings of the heavenly demon religion arrived in front of the collapsed cave as well. Their faces were extremely sunken. They've already fled through the teleportation formation. However, the level of the teleportation formation isn't very high, so they can't have traveled too far. They should still be within the range of our senses. One of the divine kings said with a deep voice as his demonic aura surged around him. Afterwards, the three of them immediately expanded the senses of their souls to search for Jianchen and Kea. At this moment, Jianchen and Kea had already appeared in an ancient mountain range within the divine kingdom of Datian. There was also a teleportation formation that had been set up there in perfect condition. Jianchen had personally set up these teleportation formations after killing the three over-gods of the heavenly demon religion. It was a path of retreat for the Tianyuan family. However, he had never thought that the people of the Tianyuan family would not use the teleportation formations he had set up back then. Instead, they would save his life. I never thought that there would be a hidden teleportation formation in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. It's all thanks to this teleportation formation. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for us to escape from the three divine kings. Kea patted his chest in the gloomy cave as he spoke, with lingering fear. Afterwards, he looked at Jianchen and asked, "Jianchen, where are we right now? We should have escaped from the three divine kings by now, right?" Jianchen remained stern. He shook his head when he heard Kea's question. We're within the divine kingdom of Datian right now, although it's extremely far away from the divine kingdom of Qingyang. The three of them are divine king experts after all, and they've all reached late divine king. The senses of their souls are extremely powerful, able to envelop an entire divine kingdom effortlessly. As a result, we're probably still within the range of their senses. However, as soon as Jianchen finished speaking, his and Kea's faces both changed. At that moment, the two of them could clearly sense the extremely powerful senses of the soul sweep over them. Just the pressure from the senses of the soul was enough to make the two of them feel as heavy as a mountain. They've already found us. Let's continue with the teleportation. I'd like to see whether the senses of the divine kings, late divine king, can extend from the divine kingdom of Qingyang to the heavenly moon empire, Jianchen said coldly. Jianchen said coldly. He pulled Kaya into the teleportation formation and activated it again, leaving the cave. Without any exception, Jianchen destroyed the teleportation formation in the divine kingdom of Datian when they left to prevent the three divine kings from using it. As a result, the three divine kings of the heavenly demon religion could only slowly fly to the heavenly moon empire if they wanted to catch up to them. Chapter 1979. The divine king and Huai continued to engage in an intense battle in outer space. Sword Qi crisscrossed the surroundings as sword intent surged. Every single strand of sword Qi was as resplendent as a waterfall, like a river of stars. They radiated with devastating power. The divine king was a primordial realm expert, and his laws of the sword had reached sword immortal. Sword Qi permeated his surroundings as countless illusionary swords danced around him. Right now, he really seemed like an immortal of the sword. He seemed like he was floating in the air. On the other side, Huayan surged with demonic aura. He controlled the laws of darkness, overturning light and obscuring the sun and moon, causing them to dim. He clashed with the divine king's laws of the sword time and time again. The battle between the two of them seemed to be extremely intense, but they did not actually engage in a battle to the death. However, even with that being the case, the shockwaves from their battle were devastating, causing space to distort and space to become chaotic. They kept each other busy so that they did not have the energy to worry about Jianchen. This was already the limit of the divine king's abilities. He was unable to do anything about the three divine king who pursued Jianchen. The heritage of the current divine kingdom of Pingtian was just too shallow. Even though they already possessed a primordial realm expert, they still only had a single grand imperial protector as a divine king. Moreover, the grand imperial protector was only an early divine king. He was powerless against the danger that Jianchen faced. At this moment, Jianchen successfully entered the territory of the Heavenly Moon Empire after passing through the teleportation formation. After destroying the teleportation formation in the Heavenly Moon Empire, he and Kea shot towards the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire with lightning speed. Along the way, Jianchen ingested some more healing pills. Coupled with the regeneration of his chaotic body, he recovered as quickly as he could. Kea also ingested healing pills as he traveled as quickly as he could with Jianchen. "Jianchen, where are we going next?" Kea asked. This was the first time she had left the Dong and province since coming to the Saint's world, and she had escaped from the pursuit of 3 experts. She was completely unfamiliar with the Saint's world, so she had no idea what to do now. After hearing Kea's words, Jianchen pondered for a moment and said, "Now that we've been targeted by the Heavenly Demon Religion, we definitely can't return to the Tianyuan family. Therefore, we can only flee further away and completely escape their pursuit. Our greatest enemy isn't the 3 Divine King, but one of the 3 vice leaders of the Heavenly Demon Religion, Huayan. Although Huayan has been kept busy by the Divine King, it definitely won't last for long. As a result, we need to find a way to avoid him." The light in Jianchen's eyes flickered when he reached there. He frowned and thought for a while before making up his mind. He said, "Let's go to the Blood Sun Empire." Before long, Jianchen and Kea arrived at the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire. They did not stop at all. After paying quite a hefty fee, they went to the Blood Sun Empire through the teleportation formation there. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region. They were supreme, and their authority in the southern region was equivalent to the Shi dynasty in the northern region. They were supreme existences. Now that Jianchen had caught the attention of the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan, if there was a place in the southern region that could make a primordial realm expert like Huayan fear, it would be the eternal Blood Sun Empire. At the same time, in the northern region of the Cloud Plain, in the imperial palace of the Shi Empire, a talented, beautiful woman who only seemed to be in her 20s sat in a pavilion with a troubled expression. She stared at an embroidered box on a stone table as she sighed constantly. The woman was Princess Tai, and of the Shi dynasty. "Sigh, it's already been so long. Yet I still haven't completed what Jianchen told me to do. What should I do?" Princess Tai murmured. She stared at the box on the stone table in a rather dull manner as she was troubled. "It's all my fault. I didn't think so much when I agreed to Jianchen's request. I thought it would be a piece of cake and that I could complete it easily. I never thought it would actually be so difficult. With Aunt's temper, I probably can't take out the box before her. However, I've never found an opportunity with Uncle." Princess Tai propped up her chin with her hands as she sighed powerlessly in the garden. Now, the box had basically become a sore point for her. After all, she had promised Jianchen that she would never be able to rest easy unless she personally gave the box to the Empress or the Emperor. Sister Tai, and why are you here alone? And why are you staring at the box in a daze? What's inside the box?" At this moment, a rather mischievous voice rang out from behind Princess. A mischievous girl who only seemed to be 15 or 16 in palace robes stood behind Princess. She had a faint smile on her face as her large, bright eyes looked around. They were filled with mischief and liveliness. Soon after, she arrived in front of the stone table in a flash. She picked up the brocade box on the table and giggled. "Big Sister Taiyan, is the thing in the box a present that you prepared for Bing-a?" Bing is a little eager to see what this present is. As she spoke, the girl who called herself Bing opened the brocade box without any hesitation. "Bing, or don't. This belongs to someone else." Princess Taiyan reminded her, but it was already too late. Bing had already opened the box. Inside the brocade box, there wasn't any priceless treasure. There was only an extremely ordinary-looking jade pendant. Looking at the item in the brocade box, Bing's expression froze. Her originally excited mood instantly turned into disappointment. She took the jade pendant in the brocade box and looked at it casually. Pursing her lips, she said, "What is this?" "It's just an ordinary jade pendant. Why would it need to be stored in such an expensive box? I thought it was something good." "Bing, how can you be so rude?" Princess Tai frowned as she complained to Bing, with great dissatisfaction. However, even though she was stern right now, there was a sliver of love for Bing in her eyes. As she said that, Princess Tai snatched the jade pendant from Bing, and could not help but study it. In reality, she had always been extremely curious about the item in the box. After all, this was a gift that Jianqin had ordered her to personally give to the Empress or the Emperor. Without even thinking about it, she knew that the item inside was extremely important. However, when Princess Tai looked at the jade pendant in her hand, she felt extremely doubtful and perplexed. She could tell with a single glance that the jade pendant was nothing valuable. It was made of extremely ordinary material. It was something that no one would take an extra glance at in the imperial palace of the Shi dynasty. The only thing that was worth looking at was that the patterns on the jade pendant were extremely exquisite. However, Princess Tai was rather confused by the two words she carved on it. "Is this the item that Jianqin wanted me to personally give to aunt and uncle?" Princess Tai became covered in cold sweat. At that moment, she felt extremely fortunate that Bing had opened the box and let her know what was inside beforehand. Otherwise, if she really did give such an ordinary jade pendant to her aunt and uncle, it would truly be embarrassing. Even if her aunt and uncle did not blame her, she would still be too ashamed to show her face. "Sienna." At this moment, a rather dignified voice rang out. The dignified Empress appeared in the imperial gardens and slowly made her way towards Princess Tai. Aunt. Princess Tai was alarmed. She turned around and looked at the Empress, who was slowly making her way over. Then she thought about how the open box was still on the stone table. She immediately became rather flustered. However, she seemed to have completely not realized that the jade pendant within the brocade box was still being held in her hand at this moment. Bing greets the Empress. The girl who called herself Bing stopped being mischievous and bowed towards the Empress politely. She was not as composed as Princess Tai before the Empress. Her face was filled with nervousness. The Empress looked at Princess Tai gently. Just when she was about to speak, she suddenly saw the jade pendant in Princess Tai's hand. Chapter 1980. In the next moment, with a slight movement, the Empress appeared before Princess Tai, as if she had teleported. Before Princess Tai could react, she snatched the jade pendant from Princess Tai's hand and studied it carefully. Even though the jade pendant was made from an extremely ordinary material, the exquisite patterns engraved on it made the Empress' cold heart beat violently. In particular, when the Empress saw the two-word Chiu on the jade pendant, her hand could not help but tremble violently. She was extremely familiar with the jade pendant. As a matter of fact, the appearance of the jade pendant, the exquisite patterns, and the two words engraved on it had already become an imprint. It had been deeply imprinted into the depths of her soul, making it unforgettable. This was because when she and Shi Ziyun were hunted down by their enemies and abandoned their daughter out of helplessness, they had left a jade pendant like this on their daughter as proof of her identity. Even though the jade pendant was not made from the same material as the one they had left behind, everything else was the same as the jade pendant they had left for their daughter. "Xian, this jade pendant, where did you obtain this jade pendant from?" The Empress' eyes were glistening with tears. Her trembling voice was filled with urgency, mixed with excitement that anyone could hear. At that moment, the Empress' calm heart seemed to become an erupting volcano. Her emotions fluctuated violently, making it difficult for her to remain calm. Over the past few years, She and Emperor Shi had been worried sick. They'd basically thought about their daughter at all times. They had even sent people to secretly search for her for 2,000 years, but there was still no news at all. As time went on, their missing daughter had basically become a sore point for them. It was an eternal pain in their hearts. This was because they had failed to find any clues in 2,000 years. In this cruel world where the strong reigned supreme, they had no idea whether their daughter was still alive or not. However, now that the Empress, who had already felt some despair, suddenly saw the jade pendant she had left for her daughter, the flames of hope ignited in her heart once more. Her daughter, who had been missing for 2,000 years, suddenly had a clue. This huge surprise made the Empress extremely excited. Princess Tai and stared at her aunt in a daze. She was completely bewildered. She was rather confused. She really could not understand. Wasn't it just an ordinary piece of jade? Why would her usually cold aunt react so intensely? As for Bing, she was even more dumbfounded. She stared blankly at the Empress, and her mischievous little face was filled with shock. At this moment, she even suspected that the celestial Empress she saw was an impostor. This was because, in her memories, the Empress had always been cold and proud, keeping everyone at a distance. She would always be cold to everyone. Only when she saw Big Sister Great and would she show kindness. But now, she actually saw tears in the Empress' eyes. She saw excitement on the Empress' face. This was an unbelievable thing in Bing's opinion. Even though Princess Tai was very confused, she still asked, "Aunt, do you remember when I said there was a supreme over-god called Jianqin?" In the past, the supreme over-god gave Xian an embroidered box and told Xian to personally hand it to aunt or uncle. This jade pendant was the only item in the embroidered box. What? The thing in the brocade box was actually this jade pendant? The Empress's face was filled with regret. She naturally remembered the brocade box clearly. Back then, she did not care about an item given to her by an over-god. However, she had never thought that the item in there would be clues to her daughter who had been missing for 2,000 years. No, I have to tell Ziyun about something so important. The Empress completely vanished, leaving Princess Tai and Enbing standing in the garden in confusion. In the Shi dynasty, Emperor Shi sat on the throne in his 9 dragons' robes and presided over the affairs of state within a majestic discussion hall. Below him, officials stood in an orderly fashion. All of them were respectful. Ziyun. At this moment, the Empress' voice rang out. She held the jade pendant in her hand as she flew over as a blur, attracting the attention of all the officials. "Xian, why are you in such a hurry?" Emperor, she sat on the throne and looked at the Empress. He was very confused. "Ziyun, look." The Empress arrived before Emperor Shi and directly passed the jade pendant to Emperor Shi. When the Shi Emperor saw the jade pendant, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He stood up from his throne out of reflex as an extremely terrifying presence radiated from his body uncontrollably. Like a surging wave, it wreaked havoc in the entire discussion hall, forcing all the officials back. "Where did this jade pendant come from?" Emperor, she asked. His voice trembled with excitement. As the mighty emperor of the Shi Empire, he struggled to control his emotions at this moment. The Empress explained the origins of the jade pendant in a few words. "Let's go see Xian." After learning the origins of the jade pendant, Emperor, she was even more anxious than the Empress. He did not even bother with the affairs of state. He directly vanished from the discussion hall with the Empress, leaving behind all the officials looking at each other. Princess Tai and Anbing remained where they were in the imperial garden. Clearly, the two of them had yet to recover from their shock. At this moment, there was a flash, and the dignified Emperor Shi and the Empress appeared beside Princess Tai, and like they had teleported. "Xian, where is Jianqin, who left behind this jade pendant right now?" Emperor, she directly asked. His voice was filled with urgency. Uncle! Only now did Princess tie and returned to her senses. She was stunned when she saw Emperor Shi suddenly appear before her, but she returned to her senses very quickly. She said, Uncle, when Jianqin gave this jade pendant to Xian, he was still in the Xiandao dynasty. Xian, cannot be certain whether he's still there or not. Let's go to the Xiandao dynasty. Emperor Shi was a decisive person. He immediately left the Shi dynasty with Princess Tai and the Empress, directly making his way to the Xiandao dynasty. Since Emperor Shi was traveling, he naturally would not be too shabby. As a result, 2 subjects of the imperial family who were also at the primordial realm accompanied him. After learning about his daughter's whereabouts, the Shi emperor was clearly in a panic. He went as far as to personally take action, using his supreme cultivation as a chaotic prime to take everyone on the journey. A world with a single thought and an illusion with a single step. In just 5 or 6 steps, he crossed a huge distance, directly arriving above the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire from the Shi Empire. Emperor Shi's personal arrival shook up the entire Xiandao dynasty. All the primordial realm experts in the Xiandao dynasty emerged from seclusion and welcomed him politely. Aside from Tian Shuang, there were 2 other ruddy old men among the primordial realm experts of the Xiandao dynasty. They bowed towards Emperor Shi as they felt uneasy inside. In the past few years, Emperor Shi had made a name for himself through slaughter. As a result, the 3 primordial realm experts of the Xiandao dynasty were rather uneasy with Emperor Shi's arrival. They all thought back to whether they had participated in the hunt for Emperor Shi in the past. Is Jianqin in your Xiandao dynasty? However, to the surprise of the 3 primordial realm experts, Emperor Shi asked about a person called Jianqin as soon as he arrived. The 2 ruddy old men among the 3 primordial realm experts of the Xiandao Empire became doubtful when they heard that name. A gleam of light flashed through Tian Shuang's eyes. She said after some thought, Emperor Shi, Jianqin has already left our Xiandao dynasty. If I've guessed correctly, he should be in a place called the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region. The southern region, the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Emperor, she murmured before clasping his hands at Tian Shuang to express his gratitude. He immediately hurried off to the southern region with everyone. Emperor, she did not take a planar teleportation formation. With his cultivation as a chaotic prime, he moved even faster than teleportation formations on the cloud plane. A few figures flew through the air with lightning speed in the Dong and province of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. They directly entered the province and stopped above the Tianyuan family in the end. The person at the front seemed to be in his 40s. He wore purplish golden robes and possessed a rather dignified bearing. He looked down at the Tianyuan family coldly from above. The middle-aged man was the 9th prince of the Eternal Blood Sun Empire. He directly found the Tianyuan family through the information provided by the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. 9th prince, the Tianyuan family is only a small clan. Is the theft of the flower of ways really related to them? A divine king behind the 9th prince asked carefully. The 9th prince hovered in the air as he stared at the Tianyuan family below emotionlessly. He said, "The person from the Earth Spirit sect told me through an anonymous jade slip that several decades ago, Jianqin assisted the soul of a primordial realm expert in the divine King Duanmu's dwelling. She obtained some items left behind by Duanmu and used them to recover her body. At that time, the primordial realm expert who had just recovered her body was only an overgod. However, recently, Jianqin was targeted by the commander of the 9th Army of the Heavenly Demon Religion, Yaxilian. In the end, he was saved by a primordial realm expert, and even Yaxilian was captured. It's extremely likely that this primordial realm expert was the one who obtained some items from the divine King Duanmu and recovered her body with Jianqin's assistance." The 9th prince stood with his arms behind his back and said slowly, even if she was a primordial realm expert when she was still alive, It's impossible for her to recover so quickly unless she possesses extremely precious heavenly resources. The flower of ways just happens to be one of those extremely precious heavenly resources. As a result, I'm basically certain that the person who stole the flower of ways is the primordial realm expert behind Genshin. As he spoke, the ninth prince's face darkened. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He had already realized that the flower of ways had probably been devoured already, but he had to avenge it. Without the flower of ways, the time it would take for him to reach the primordial realm would be extended indefinitely. Even with his extraordinary talent, breaking through the bottleneck between godhood and the primordial realm would be anything but easy. The more the ninth prince thought about it, the more furious he became. In the end, it turned into surging killing intent, and he directly threw a punch at the Tianyuan family below. Boom! With a great sound that shook up the entire province, the Divine King level formation that protected the Tianyuan family directly collapsed from the ninth prince's punch. Chapter 1981. With the destruction of the protective formation, the Tianyuan clan that had been hidden within was clearly exposed to everyone's eyes. However, the Tianyuan family was no longer as unharmed as before. The ninth prince's attack was just too powerful. Not only did it destroy the Divine King level protective formation, but the powerful ripples of energy even destroyed a third of the Tianyuan family. It was a mess as far as the eye could see. If it were not for the protective formation that blocked most of the ninth prince's attack, the entire Tianyuan family probably would have been obliterated. However, even with that being the case, many of the weaker servants and guards in the Tianyuan family were still affected and heavily injured. The sudden occurrence threw the Tianyuan family into chaos. Many people ran out in a panic. They all paled when they saw the Divine King level protective formation that had completely collapsed. Shiyu, Emo, Ling, and Ofu, and the other elders gathered together. They stared at the sky sternly. Even Siyu, Ruijin, Honglian, Blackfish, and Xiongzhong from the world of Forsaken Saints emerged from the Forbidden Grounds. They looked at the damaged protective formation in the surroundings and became extremely stern. They all knew that the protective formation of the Tianyuan family was on the level of a Divine King level protective formation. It could be described as extremely powerful in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. However, at that moment, the defensive formation that they thought to be impregnable shattered without any signs at all. That made all of them realize just how powerful the invaders were. May I ask how our Tianyuan family has offended seniors for you to shatter our Tianyuan family's protective formation as soon as you've arrived? Shiyu stared at the ninth prince and the others in the sky with an ugly expression as she said coldly. Siyu arrived beside Shiyu as well. He stared at the ninth prince and the others in the sky emotionlessly. A vicious light flickered through his sharp eyes. The other elders of the Tianyuan family all stood behind Shiyu and Siyu. They were the only two overgods in the Tianyuan family right now. The face of the Divine King behind the ninth prince immediately sank when he heard Shiyu's cold question. He called out, "How dare you? Do you know who you're talking to? This is the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Why don't you kneel and greet him when you see him?" The expressions of the people of the Tianyuan family changed once again when they heard that. They could not help but look at one another. Many of them were filled with doubt. They had no idea when the Tianyuan family had offended the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. As for Shiyu, her heart suddenly sank. The ninth prince had come with ill intentions. She sensed that the situation was bad. The consequences of offending the Blood Sun Empire were even more severe than offending the heavenly demon religion. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region. They possessed supreme status in the southern region. Before them, even ancient empires with deep heritage like the Heavenly Moon Empire would have to lower their heads, let alone the Tianyuan family. Which one of you is the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan Genshin? The ninth prince asked. His face was sunken, and his voice was bone-chillingly cold. Your Highness, unfortunately, the patriarch is not in the clan right now. She clasped her fist and said emotionlessly, "He's not here." A gleam of light flashed through the ninth prince's eyes. Just when he wanted to say something, his face suddenly changed. His eyes were immediately filled with heavy, cold, killing intent. With a raise of his hand, terrifying energy gathered, condensing into a huge hand that reached towards the forbidden grounds of the Tianyuan family. Boom! With a muffled sound, the entire ground shook violently. The ninth prince had used his palm of energy to directly pull out a secret room deep underground in the forbidden grounds. The tough metal that held the room together shattered in the ninth prince's hand. The secret room was where newbies cultivated. With the destruction of the room, newbies naturally fell out as well. Along with him was a 3,000-meter-long, golden-striped silver snake that was only as thick as a wrist. The golden-striped silver snake had already lost all signs of life. It had lost a large amount of vitality, causing its body to wither slightly. The expressions of the divine king who had come with the ninth prince all changed when they saw the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. Surging killing intent radiated from their bodies uncontrollably. No wonder we didn't find the golden python's corpse in the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. You've actually brought it here. So your Tianyuan family really is involved with the Flower of Ways being stolen. The Tianyuan family sure is bold. You even dare to covet what belongs to the ninth prince. Even wiping out your entire clan for such a heavy crime wouldn't be going too far. The divine king behind the ninth prince all said coldly. Killing intent surged from all of them. They were tempted to wipe out the entire Tianyuan family with a single wave of their hand. As for the ninth prince, he stared at the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. His face was extremely sunken. At that moment, his chest was already brimming with fury, and surging killing intent was brewing within him. If he had only been slightly suspicious of Genshin before, then he was extremely certain of his suspicions after seeing the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. Newbie stood up from the ground in a rather wretched manner. His eyes were filled with confusion at first, but soon after, the furious roars of the divine king reached Newbie's ears, allowing him to understand what had happened. His face immediately became ugly. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure appeared. One of the divine kings behind the ninth prince immediately appeared before Newbie's. He grabbed Newbies's neck firmly as his gaze was vicious. Killing intent surged as he said coldly, "How bold of you to absorb Jean Mang's essence. Jean Mang is a subordinate of the ninth prince, yet you've treated his corpse like this. I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." With that, the divine king tightened his grip, and with a clear crack, Newbies's neck was crushed to pieces. Even though Newbies's cultivation had increased from god to early over god after absorbing a portion of Jean Mang's essence, he was still extremely puny before a divine king. He was unable to fight back at all. Afterwards, the divine king reached towards Newbies's head in an attempt to forcefully extract Newbies's soul from his body. Newbies's eyes narrowed to the size of needles. He stared fixedly at the divine king's hand as it approached him. His eyes were filled with reluctance, and he wanted to resist with everything he had. However, the difference in strength was just too great. Even if he used everything he had, it would be useless. Am I, the great Newbies, going to die like this? No, I refuse to accept this. I refuse to accept this. I've only just come to the saint's world. I haven't seen all of its beauty yet. I haven't reached the limits of cultivation yet. Newbies roared out furiously inside. Faced with such great danger, his survival instincts allowed him to unleash all of his potential. At this moment, the blood in his body was surging thousands of times faster than usual. On his face, on his arms, and in every part of his body, the blood vessels hidden under his skin were bulging, with a faint golden brilliance flowing through them. At that moment, Newbies could clearly sense that the power of his bloodline was rapidly strengthening. He felt like his entire body was surging with power. However, this was still unable to change the outcome. Even if the power of his bloodline was strengthening and his battle prowess was increasing, it was still not enough for him to escape from the Divine King. After all, he was only an early overgod right now. Chapter 1982. Extremely powerful killing intent condensed on Siyu as the force of slaughter condensed on him. His wings had already risen high into the air, and they fused together like a blade. They slashed out with Siyu's killing intent. Sacred Feather had already used his full strength against a God King. He unleashed all of his strength without holding back at all. His presence was overwhelming as he pressed forward with an indomitable will. Even though he was only an early overgod, the power of his bloodline was extremely powerful as he was Siyu the Tiger Emperor. Coupled with the fact that he had comprehended the way of slaughter, his attack was extremely powerful. As a result, his attack was extremely powerful, exceeding the battle prowess he should have possessed at his current level of cultivation. The Divine King who grabbed Nubis by the neck and planned on plucking out Nubis' soul cruelly sneered disdainfully when he sensed Siyu's attack. He sneered, "How dare an ant take on a tiger? You're looking to die." With that, the Divine King's hand that originally extended towards Nubis suddenly reached towards Siyu's blade-like wings. Siyu's wings had already gathered all his power. The power of the laws of the way of slaughter had also condensed on them. However, when his full-powered attack came in contact with the Divine King's hand, the Divine King managed to grab it. The great power within the wings was unable to harm his opponent at all. It's actually the way of slaughter. Not bad. The laws you've comprehended are very powerful. But it's a pity that your personal cultivation is just too weak, the Divine King said coldly. The God King said coldly. His gaze towards Sacred Feather was filled with iciness. Afterwards, his hand suddenly shook, and terrifying energy that was enough to devastate overgods erupted, striking Sacred Feather mercilessly. Sacred Feather opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His body flew backward, powerlessly. The sound of bones breaking could be heard from the wings on his back. White feathers fluttered in the air. Sacred Feather's pair of divine wings drooped powerlessly. Not only were they dyed red with blood, but even his body had turned blood red. He was bathed in blood. The Divine King's attack was extremely powerful. Although Siyu's bloodline was powerful, it was unable to make up for the tremendous difference in cultivation between an overgod and a Divine King. He was heavily injured from a single strike. "Siyu!" Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish all cried out. They arrived before Siyu with a single step. Their faces were filled with worry, and they immediately fished out pills to feed Siyu. "Humph! Have you gotten the Ninth Prince's permission to save him?" The Divine King behind the Ninth Prince said coldly. He clenched his hand gently, and the space around Ruijin, Honglian, and Heiyu froze immediately. The Divine King comprehended the laws of space, so he could turn an entire region of space into a prison with a single thought. Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish were completely immobilized. They could not even move a finger or blink before a Divine King who had comprehended the laws of space. A painful grunt rang out. The Divine King who had snapped Nubi's neck had already pressed his right hand against Nubi's head. His face was filled with extreme cruelty, and his fingers had already pierced through Nubi's scalp, slowly digging in. Golden blood flowed from Nubi's head, dripping down his face. The Divine King's hand slowly approached Nubi's soul. Even though Nubi's bloodline had mutated due to his great reluctance and desire to live, strengthening it, it would not be more powerful than the Sacred Feather Tiger Emperor's bloodline, no matter how powerful it was. Even the Sacred Feather Tiger Emperor could not withstand a single blow from a God King, so it went without saying for him. Even though the Tianyuan family was furious after witnessing Nubi's fate, they really could not summon any power to resist the Divine King. At that moment, a deep sense of powerlessness filled everyone's chests. Shiyu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw what was happening. Her heart was filled with rage. When she saw that the Divine King's hand was about to touch Nubi's soul, determination suddenly filled her eyes. She no longer cared about her own life and struck out fearlessly. Jianqin had given her the grace of creation. Now that the Tianyuan family was in danger, and Jianqin's friend, Nubi's, was in danger as well, she could not just watch this tragedy unfold without doing anything. She wielded her sword and unleashed a resplendent streak of light. She fused with her sword and slashed at the Divine King's arm. Humph! There really are quite a few people in the Tianyuan family who overestimate themselves. The Divine King who had captured Nubi sneered. He turned to look at Shiyu and blew out a breath. Swoosh! With that, the surroundings immediately began to howl. A terrifying storm of energy erupted from the Divine King's mouth, striking Shiyu as a terrifying shockwave. Shiyu came to a halt. That was not all. She could not help but retreat again and again before the storm of energy. Speak. Where is Jianqin? Or I'll kill the four of you first. The Divine King, who grasped the laws of space, said coldly. As he slowly clenched his hand, the space around Ruijin and the others immediately began to crack. Under the Divine King's control, the space there began to shrink at a visible rate. Ruijin and the others who were trapped in the space rapidly shrank as the space around them rapidly compressed. Their clothes had already become tightly stuck to their bodies. The tremendous pressure from all directions caused their bodies to shrink at a visible rate. Blood leaked out from their pores under the pressure, dyeing their clothes red in an instant. If this continued, they would only explode in the end. In the face of such a situation, they had no way to resist at all. No, it's not just the four of them. There's also these people. The Divine King, who grasped the laws of space, said indifferently. He gently extended a finger towards the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family behind Shiyu. At that moment, the space behind Shiyu froze as well. All the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family were trapped in there. These people included the ancestor of the Emo clan, Emo Ling, and Shiyu's foster father. Even Emo Yen was there. The entire Tianyuan family shivered in fear. The arrival of the ninth prince and the others had cast a shadow of death over the Tianyuan family. Arg! Shiyu's entire body trembled when she saw this. Suddenly, she bellowed out at the sky, and faint flames radiated from her body. The flames did not possess any heat, but with the appearance of the flames, Shiyu's presence actually skyrocketed. Very soon, she broke through the limits of early overgod and reached an even higher level. However, even though Shiyu's presence was increasing and her strength was increasing, her presence of life was weakening at a visible rate. Her long, black hair rapidly changed color. It became gray-white, and in the end, snow-white. The fate of the Tianyuan family had deeply stimulated Shiyu. She burned her life force and soul, regardless of the consequences, in exchange for battle prowess that exceeded her current level of cultivation. Chapter 1983. Shiyu looked at the ninth prince. Her eyes were filled with undisguised fury and resentment. The disaster that the Tianyuan family faced today was all because of the ninth prince. Ninth prince, I'll kill you. She roared out furiously. She fused with her sword and stabbed towards the ninth prince with all the power she had gained from burning her life force. The sword shone resplendently, illuminating the entire provincial city. The strike was like a comet, shooting through the sky with extremely resplendent light. It possessed the color of burning life force, an unstoppable presence, and she used determination to die. The experts from the Divine King, who had come with the ninth prince, were all slightly stunned when they saw Shiyu attack the ninth prince. Afterwards, they smiled strangely. Their smiles were filled with deep disdain and mockery. The ninth prince was not like the wastrel young masters of large organizations who only knew how to use their status to throw their weight around. He was weak himself, the type who only put on a brave front. In reality, the ninth prince was the most powerful and terrifying person among them. His cultivation had reached the limits of the Divine King, and he was already preparing to break through to the primordial realm, let alone over gods burning their vitality and souls. Even some god kings burning their vitality and souls would not be able to harm the ninth prince at all before an expert like that. The ninth prince stared at Shiyu calmly. His eyes were cold, as if he was a high and mighty king looking at an ant. He did not do anything unnecessary in the face of Shiyu's attack that she had sacrificed her life for. All he did was gently wave his hand. He was calm and composed. Immediately, the sky changed color and the sun and moon lost their luster. The seemingly casual action of the ninth prince actually had the power to overturn the world. At this moment, he was like the ruler of the world. With a raise of his hand, he could destroy an entire region of the universe. Before Shiyu could even approach the ninth prince, she sensed an irresistible power assault her. Before this power, she felt like she was a lone boat in the vast ocean. She was so insignificant that she could not even take a single blow. Kacha! Shiyu's sword directly shattered when it came in contact with the ninth prince's power. It shattered into countless pieces with a crisp sound. The terrifying power passed through her arm and struck her body heavily with overwhelming force. Spurt! Shiyu vomited a mouthful of blood, mixed with bits of organs. It turned into a bloody mist that drifted through the air, dyeing it red. As for Shiyu, she was sent flying like a kite with its string cut. As she flew backwards, her sword-wielding right hand had turned into a bloody mess. Even the bones in her hand had been reduced to dust. Following that, the flesh on her entire right arm rapidly disintegrated in midair. Her entire right arm was disappearing bit by bit. In a single moment, Shiyu's right arm had vanished, leaving behind only a puddle of blood on the ground. Shiyu flew very far away until she collided with the spatial barrier that trapped the upper echelons of the Tianyuan family. Only then did she fall heavily to the ground, constantly vomiting blood. Her presence plummeted in a single moment. She had completely withered away. She was on the brink of death. Behind her, Shiyu's foster father, Emo Xingfeng, stared at the white-haired Shiyu as she lay on the ground. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with grief. Although Shiyu was not his daughter by blood, he had raised her single-handedly after all. His feelings for her were so deep that he had already treated her like his own child. However, his body was trapped there by the spatial force of the God King who grasped the power of laws. He couldn't move at all. Right now, he couldn't do anything. A painful voice rang out. Nubis' skull had been ripped open, and his soul had been forcefully extracted by the Divine King. At the same time, the spatial pressure around Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish had reached the limits of what they could endure. It made them bleed from all their orifices as all their bones cracked. Only Siyu continued to endure it with great difficulty. The three of them gritted their teeth and used their great willpower to summon the origin energy armor they had worn on their way up from a lower world. However, it was useless. Under the pressure of the spatial force, their origin energy armor immediately became riddled with cracks before shattering. The ninth prince looked at this coldly and said, "I'll give you a few seconds to notify your patriarch Jianchen to return or tell me who the primordial realm expert behind Jianchen is and where he is right now. Tell me, and I can grant you a quick death. Otherwise..." The ninth prince's eyes turned cold when he reached there. He glanced past the people of the Tianyuan family coldly and said with killing intent, "I'll make you wish you were dead." Shiyu raised her head and stared at the ninth prince resentfully. She said weakly, "If you want to kill us, then kill us. We will never contact the patriarch. However, I can guarantee you that if you wipe out our Tianyuan family, the patriarch will definitely wipe out your entire Blood Sun empire to avenge us." Shiyu's voice was filled with stubbornness. She would rather die than submit. The ninth prince's eyes turned cold. He reached out and pulled Shiyu over from afar. He grabbed her by the neck and lifted her into the air. He said, "You do have some backbone. However, the more backbone you have, the more miserable your end will be. The ninth prince glanced behind him and said, "Mo Yen, aren't you skilled in harvesting yin and yang? I'll bestow this woman to you now. Serve her well here." With that, the ninth prince directly tossed Xiu behind him. There were two divine kings behind the ninth prince. They had not done anything since the beginning. When they saw the ninth prince toss Xiu over, a perverted light immediately flashed through the eyes of one of them. He pulled Xiu into his arms and sniggered, "Your Highness is wise. It would be quite the pity to kill such a beautiful woman just like that. Mo Yen will definitely obey your Highness' orders and serve this woman well." "Why?" "Don't even think about it." Xiu's face changed when she heard their conversation. Determination filled her eyes, and she wanted to blow herself up. However, Mo Yen only touched Xiu gently and sealed up all her cultivation, stopping her from blowing herself up. He sniggered, "Little beauty, don't think about dying so soon. You've cultivated for so many years, so you probably haven't tasted the affection of a man yet, right? However, there's no need to be impatient, because you'll experience the joy of being pampered by a man very soon. I guarantee you that you'll never forget that wonderful feeling for the rest of your life. Haha." As he spoke, Mo Yen gently tore apart Xiu's blood-soaked clothes in front of everyone. He did not move quickly. Instead, he moved extremely slowly. However, the perverted desire in his eyes only grew. The eyes of everyone from the Tianyuan clan almost popped out of their sockets when they saw this. However, all of them felt powerless before the ninth prince and the other divine king experts. They could not even protect themselves. However, at this moment, the calm space 1,000 meters above the Tianyuan clan suddenly began to ripple. It surged like water. Chapter 1984. At the very front was a middle-aged man. He wore the robes of a sovereign with 9 dragons. His resolute face gave off an unquestionable sense of dignity. Even though his presence was completely concealed, not leaking out at all, it was like the entire world was beneath his feet when he appeared. Behind the middle-aged man were 2 women. One of them looked to be in her 30s. She was graceful and elegant, and she still retained her charm. She also had a dignified face, but it was filled with anxiety and excitement. The other woman only seemed to be in her 20s. She was beautiful and gave off a noble presence. She lived like a princess, so people could tell with a single glance that she was of extraordinary birth. Behind them were 2 ruddy old men. They had concealed all of their presences, so no one could sense their existence, let alone see through their cultivation. This group of people was the Shi Emperor's group, who had traveled a great distance from the northern region. As soon as they arrived above the Tianyuan family, Emperor Shi and the Empress looked at the Tianyuan family below. Although many people had gathered in the Tianyuan family, Emperor Shi and his wife were both primordial realm experts, while Emperor Shi had become a chaotic prime. As a result, when they arrived, they felt a resonance from their bloodline clearly in their hearts. It made the 2 of them surge. Following the resonance from their bloodline, they both locked onto Xiu. However, when they saw what was happening below, their eyes became bloodshot in a single instance. Surging killing intent erupted like a tsunami, plunging the surroundings into darkness. It caused the sun, moon, and stars in the sky to tremble. The temperature of the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian plummeted at that moment. The divine king and the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion engaged in an extremely intense battle in outer space. However, at this moment, a terrifying killing intent that even shocked them appeared. It shocked them to the point where they could not help but stop their battle and look in the direction of the Dong'an province. A chaotic prime. The divine king and vice leader, Huai, and both cried out. They became stern. A chaotic prime had appeared in the southern region, and this chaotic prime was in the Dong and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The divine king was no longer able to remain calm. He no longer bothered with keeping Huai busy. He directly returned to the divine kingdom of Pingtian as quickly as he could. In the Earth Spirit sect of the Heavenly Moon Empire, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, Sang Tu, suddenly opened his eyes. Surprise filled his face as he looked in the direction of the divine kingdom of Pingtian cautiously. What a powerful killing intent. This killing intent comes from a primordial chaos expert. Could it be that woman? The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, Sang Tu, became extremely stern. Now that a chaotic prime had suddenly appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, he could not help but connect it to the woman in white who had snuck into his secret room silently. No, it's not her. Her presence doesn't seem like it. Then, what expert has appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian and given off such powerful killing intent? Sang Tu could no longer sit still. He immediately stood up and hurried to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. At the same time, infinite primes from the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire and the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, which was as famous as the Earth Spirit sect, were alarmed as well. They all emerged from seclusion and hurried to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. A chaotic prime had appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. This was no small matter. They had to go and investigate the killing intent that had suddenly appeared in the Tianyuan family of the Dong and province caused the ninth prince's face to change drastically. He suddenly turned his head towards the sky as disbelief filled his face. In front of this murderous intent, he felt a shiver from his soul. The killing intent was so powerful that it was enough to obliterate the world. The ninth prince felt like his soul was about to freeze. Even the ninth prince, who had reached the peak of the divine king realm, was like this, so it went without saying for the divine kings who had come with the ninth prince. They all became frightened. Mo Yen stopped tearing at Shiyu's clothes as well. The flames of primitive desire within him seemed to have been doused with a bucket of cold water, completely extinguishing them. You are! Emperor Shi and the Empress both cried out sorrowfully. Shiyu directly struck out with her hand, sending it towards Mo Yen with terrifying energy that caused the world to tremble. A chaotic prime's attack was just too great. It was earth-shaking. The Shi Emperor's furious palm strike directly destroyed space. A pitch-black spatial crack appeared in the sky, extending towards the demonic flames with lightning speed. Looking from afar, this black spatial fissure that extended towards the ground looked like a bolt of black lightning striking down. At that moment, the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire and the other god kings all felt like they were suffocating. Their hearts twitched heavily at that moment as all their hairs stood on end. Chills ran down their spines from head to toe. Be chaotic prime. The ninth prince lost his composure. His face changed drastically, and he immediately pressed his hand against his space ring. A jade talisman lay silently in a corner of his space ring. At that moment, the jade talisman had been reduced to dust silently. Demonic Flame's body silently turned into nothingness. He disappeared from the air, not even leaving behind a single speck of ash. Where he stood, there was only a broken space crack that was twisting and slowly mending itself. A mighty divine king had vanished before everyone just like that. Who knew whether he had been reduced to the most primitive particles by Emperor Shi's strike, or he had been sucked into the spatial crack? However, what was certain was that even if Mo Yen was a divine king, it was impossible for him to survive a furious strike from a chaotic prime. Emperor Shi's control over his power was extremely great. His furious strike only targeted Mo Yen, so not a single strand of energy leaked out. As a result, his strike did not produce any ripples of energy, nor did it affect anyone in the surroundings. It did not even harm a single blade of grass. However, the supreme pressure and terrifying momentum contained in his strike had an extremely strong mental impact on everyone present. You are. Emperor, Shi silently appeared before Shiyu. His burly figure began to tremble uncontrollably as tears filled his eyes. He called out emotionally, my daughter, I've finally found you. The Empress ignored the blood on Shiyu and hugged her tightly. She began to sob uncontrollably. Her tears flowed uncontrollably like a fountain. She could not stop them. She had just found her beloved daughter, who had been separated from for many years. This should have been a joyous matter, but when she saw her own flesh and blood in such a miserable state, her heart almost shattered. When she thought about how her daughter would have been doomed if she had come just a little later, the Empress felt lingering fear. Chapter 1985. Emperor, she was filled with killing intent as well. His face was extremely sunken. He placed his hand on Shi Yu's shoulder gently, and tremendous life force separated from his body. It was channeled into Shi Yu's body in an extremely gentle manner. With the injection of life force, Shi Yu, who had been on the brink of death, regained her vitality in a single instance. A sliver of color appeared in her dim eyes, and even her wounds healed rapidly. As a matter of fact, new flesh and blood even grew out of her severed right arm. Her severed arm was already recovering. After all, this was the tremendous life force of a chaotic prime. The life force might have been insignificant to chaotic primes, but to Shi Yu, who was only an overgod, it was the power of creation, the power of regeneration, or even a second life. Princess Tai and the two old men who had come with Emperor Shi landed in the Tianyuan family as well. At this moment, the three of them stared at Shi Yu in shock. Princess Tai and looked at the bloodied Shi Yu in the Empress' arms. Her feelings were extremely mixed. If she had known earlier that the box Genshin had given her would contain clues to her aunt's long-lost daughter, she would have forcefully handed the box to the Empress without any regard for anything else. Seriously, Genshin, why didn't he directly tell me something so important? If he had told Aunt about my sister's whereabouts earlier, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Princess Tai, and was very displeased with Genshin. As for the two old men who had come with Emperor Shi, they were shocked. They felt disbelief. In the Shi dynasty, everyone already knew that Emperor Shi did not have an heir. This was a publicly acknowledged fact. Yet now, Emperor Shi had suddenly gained a daughter, which left the two of them extremely surprised. At this moment, the divine king arrived in the Tianyuan family as well. He concealed all of his presence and kept an extremely low profile, such that only a few people sensed his arrival. However, after understanding the situation, the divine king did not say anything in an extremely sensible manner. Instead, he watched from one side. He stared at Emperor Shi, his wife, and the two old men sternly. His heart was in turmoil. He did not know the identities of these people. He only knew that the cultivation of any one of these four people far surpassed his own. The divine king beside the ninth prince had already become utterly frightened by the arrival of a chaotic prime. His face paled, so how could he be in the mood to care about the people of the Tianyuan family? He immediately removed the spatial shackles. The higher-ups of the Tianyuan family regained their freedom, including Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish. Everyone felt as if they had just escaped death. However, none of them said anything when they saw Shi Yu in the Empress' arms. They were all filled with shock. The patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, stared at Emperor Shi and the Empress with extremely mixed feelings. As for the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire, his face became even more uneasy. He studied Emperor Shi and the Empress seriously, but most of his attention was on Emperor Shi's 9 dragons' robes. He's wearing dragon robes and is a chaotic prime. Don't tell me. As a figure of authority in the Blood Sun Empire, the ninth prince was naturally knowledgeable. He was far more knowledgeable than the divine king in this aspect. He guessed Emperor Shi's identity very quickly, which made his heart sink. Impossible. Doesn't the Emperor Shi of the Shi dynasty have no descendants? Why does he have a daughter now, and this daughter is... The ninth prince's face became extremely ugly. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty, and he quickly made up his mind. He began to retreat silently, wanting to leave this place silently. Before we find out whether my daughter was injured by someone else, no one is allowed to leave this place. However, As soon as the ninth prince moved, the Empress' cold voice rang out. Immediately, a pressure enveloped the ninth prince. The ninth prince's body sank. The tremendous pressure caused his feet to directly sink into the ground, up to his knees. Seeing how it was impossible for him to leave secretly, the ninth prince could only brace himself and raise his hands as hard as he could. He clasped his fist and said, "I am the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. I greet the She-Emperor and the Empress. It is truly an honor for the southern region that the She-Emperor and the Empress have come in person. If there's anything you need me for, I am willing to do my best. Emperor Shi, the Empress." The Divine King was greatly surprised. The ninth prince's identity as the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire had already surprised him. However, when the ninth prince mentioned the She-Emperor and the Empress, the Divine King immediately connected them to the eternal empire of the She-Empire in the northern region. Emperor Shi, is this chaotic prime and dragon robes the current emperor of the eternal She-Empire of the northern region? Even with the Divine King's composure, he struggled to maintain his composure at that moment. He looked at Shiyu, who lay in the Empress' arms, and he was extremely shocked. However, Emperor Shi and the Empress remained indifferent after learning the ninth prince's identity. The Empress stared at the ninth prince coldly and said coldly, "Are you involved with the people who injured my daughter?" The Empress' voice was filled with killing intent. Without any doubt, she would even be bold enough to kill the ninth prince of the eternal Blood Sun Empire. The ninth prince's expression did not change. He clasped his fist. "You've misunderstood, Empress. The Emperor has personally dealt with the people who injured your daughter. I congratulate the Emperor and Empress on reuniting with your daughter." "Nonsense. The person who injured Shiyu and destroyed her arm was clearly you." As soon as the ninth prince finished speaking, Shiyu's foster father, Mo Xingfeng, stood in the crowd and said furiously, "Humph, don't you dare slander me. Tianyuan family, if you dare to slander me again, wiping out your Tianyuan family is just a matter of a single word from me with my power. Even the divine kingdom of Pingtian won't be able to protect you." The ninth prince's eyes turned cold as he stared at Mo Xingfeng. His gaze was like a sharp sword that pierced through Mo Xingfeng's eyes and into his soul. Mo Xingfeng's body trembled violently as his complexion instantly turned pale. "How awe-inspiring!" The Empress snorted coldly. She held Shiyu with one hand as she directly swung her other hand towards the ninth prince. The hand, condensed from energy, landed heavily on the ninth prince's face, sending him flying. The slap was extraordinarily powerful. Half of the ninth prince's face had been reduced to a bloody mess. His entire chin had been shattered, and his face was covered in blood. The ninth prince, a mighty divine king with his peak cultivation, was like an infant before the Empress. He was unable to fight back at all. This scene greatly impacted the hearts of the people from the Tianyuan family. They thought back to before. They had mobilized the entire power of their clan, yet they were unable to fight back at all before the ninth prince and the others. They could only watch as the end of the world descended. Yet now the ninth prince and the others, who were extremely powerful in their eyes and could easily wipe out the entire Tianyuan family, were as weak as infants before the Empress. The great contrast and dramatic change made all the people from the Tianyuan family feel like they were dreaming. The Empress crouched on the ground with Shiyu in her arms. Shiyu's blood had already dyed her clothes red. She stared at the ninth prince, who she had sent flying with killing intent, and said coldly, "Is he telling the truth? Did you really cause Er's injuries? Er's arm really was destroyed by you." At this moment, Shiyu finally recovered after receiving the tremendous life force of a chaotic prime. Her severed right arm grew back as well. She struggled to her feet from the Empress' embrace as she stared at the Empress and Emperor Shi in confusion. The Empress immediately looked at Shiyu, and her vicious gaze softened at that moment. She shone with a motherly light as she asked in concern, "Child, how do you feel?" "You, Tell me who injured you. No matter who they are or what their status is, I will avenge you. I won't spare any of them." Emperor, she carefully supported Shiyu with his powerful arm. His gaze was gentle, and it was also filled with concern. Chapter 1986. When Emperor Shi and the Empress heard Shiyu's indifferent words, the hearts of the two peak experts who had reached the primordial realm shivered. Undisguised sorrow filled their faces. Emperor Shi, the vicious person who had stirred up a storm of blood in the Shi dynasty, personally ending the lives of more than half of the primordial realm experts in the empire, the cold-blooded emperor who had even killed his own brother, showed indescribable bitterness on his face right now. His hand remained in the same position as he supported Shiyu, but it seemed to have frozen in the air. What his beloved daughter had said was like a needle, piercing Emperor Shi's heart deeply. Tears flickered in Emperor Shi's eyes. They seemed to flow uncontrollably from the eyes of this cold-blooded emperor who was renowned in the Shi dynasty. His stalwart body trembled gently as he stared at Shiyu in pain. He opened his mouth slightly as if he wanted to explain something, but when he saw the blood on his daughter, he said nothing in the end. "Child, I'm your mother. I'm your mother. This is your father. This is your father." The Empress burst into tears. She rushed over and hugged Shiyu tightly without any regard for anything else. She hugged her so tightly that she was unable to break free at all. It was as if her daughter would vanish from her side if she let go. At that moment, she was no longer the great empress of the Shi dynasty, nor was she a peak expert who had reached the primordial realm. She was just a mother with a fragile heart. People from various places had already gathered around the Tianyuan family. The primordial realm experts from the Heavenly Moon Empire had arrived as well. They stood with the Divine King and communicated with him through messages, asking about the situation here. However, with so many people gathered in one place, the scene was strangely quiet. Everyone stood there silently as they watched this scene. Their hearts were not calm at all. The ninth prince, who had lost half of his face from the Empress' slap, did not dare to make a sound. He looked at the sobbing Empress of the Shi Empire as she hugged Shiyu, as well as the Shi Emperor who stood beside her in pain. He grumbled inside. Never would he have thought that an over-god he came across casually after coming to the Tianyuan family to investigate the culprit behind the Flower of Ways was actually the princess of the Shi dynasty in the northern region. Moreover, the princess had almost died to his hands. At this moment, the ninth prince was filled with deep regret. At the same time, he felt extremely wronged. If he had known earlier that Shiyu was the only precious daughter of the current emperor of the Shi dynasty, he would not have dared to touch a single hair on her even if he was 100 times bolder. Although the Blood Sun Empire and the Shi dynasty were both rulers of a region, the current emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, who was the ninth prince's father, had many women under him. He was only one of the many children of the emperor of the Blood Sun Empire. If the interests of the empire really were threatened, his status as a prince could be removed at any time. However, Shiyu was the only daughter of the Shi dynasty's emperor. Moreover, from the feelings that Emperor Shi and the Empress had shown, no one doubted that they were willing to give up everything for their daughter. Shiyu saw that she couldn't break free from the Empress' embrace, no matter what, so she gave up on the Empress and allowed the Empress to continue hugging her. However, she found it hard to accept the fact that someone had suddenly claimed to be her biological parents. She instinctively resisted the idea. "No, that's not it. The two of you are not my parents. I have no parents at all. I only have a foster father." She gently shook her head. Her tone was very soft. However, tears were flowing from her eyes. The Empress looked at Shiyu gently as she wiped away the blood on Shiyu's face with her right hand. The blood had already dyed the Empress' hands red. She said with a trembling voice, "Silly child, don't say such foolish things. We had no other choice when we abandoned you back then. I know you hate us, and I know you can't forgive us. However, since I've found you now, I will use the rest of my life to make it up to you properly." Emperor, she walked over as well. He sighed gently You've suffered all these years. Just like what your mother said. The reason why I left you outside was to protect you. As for the specific reason, I will explain it to you later. Now, tell me, who among the people around here has bullied you? I will make the decision for you." The expressions of the ninth prince and everyone else changed when they heard Emperor Shi's words. At that moment, even though they were divine king-level experts, they could not help but tremble inside. The ninth prince secretly panicked as well. He had already sent a message back. But why had his father still not arrived? He had no doubt that Emperor Shi would kill him without any hesitation if the Blood Sun Empire still did not send anyone. He would not consider his identity at all. After all, Emperor Shi was renowned for his viciousness and mercilessness. This time, Shi finally broke free from the Empress' embrace. As soon as she thought about what the Tianyuan family had been through, she immediately shivered. She no longer cared about whether the people before her were her parents. She quickly glanced around. "Newbies!" Suddenly, she cried out and rushed over to Newbie's side. Newbies lay on the ground with his eyes wide open. His skull had shattered and his soul had been taken away. Shiyu's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. They were filled with the flames of hatred and fury. She said painfully, "Why, you killed Newbies." Newbies was Genshin's close friend. Shiyu had no idea how sorrowful Genshin would be when he heard about Newbies' death. Hearing that, the divine king who had taken away Newbies' soul immediately paled. He hurriedly said, "Don't worry, your highness. He's not dead. His soul is still here." The divine king's attitude immediately took a 180-degree turn. Before he finished speaking, he hurriedly took out Newbies' soul. He looked uneasy as he carefully handed it to Shiyu. In fact, even his hands and body were trembling slightly at this moment. His heart was filled with fear and panic. Newbies' soul was fine. Once it was free, he immediately returned to his body. However, his body was heavily injured. As a result, he looked extremely weak right now. Yen. Suddenly, Emo Xingfeng's sorrowful voice rang out. Only when she heard her foster father's sorrowful call did she remember that Emo Yen had been standing in the crowd before. Even deities struggle to endure the spatial compression. With Emo Yan's cultivation as the Holy Emperor, Shiyu immediately paled when she thought of that. She ran towards the back of the crowd as quickly as she could. However, when she arrived, Emo Yen was nowhere to be found. All she saw was a pile of collapsed flesh and blood on the ground. Her clothes were scattered in the surroundings. Wasn't that Emo Yan's favorite attire? Emo Xingfeng currently knelt before the pile of flesh. His face was filled with sorrow. This sight struck Shiyu's head like a bolt of lightning. She immediately became stunned. Her body shook violently and she almost fell over. Her face had already become extremely pale. Shiyu sat on the ground, paralyzed. She stared blankly at the lump of flesh on the ground that was no longer recognizable. She was on the verge of collapsing as tears uncontrollably rolled down her face. Yen, Shiyu murmured subconsciously. She could not help but think about the mischievous and lively girl of the past. She felt extremely sorrowful. Her feelings for Emo Yen were so deep that no one else could understand them. As a matter of fact, it could even be said that Emo Yen was the closest person to her in the world. Her feelings for Emo Yen even surpassed her foster father, Emo Xingfeng. Chapter 1987. Emperor Shi's voice was very gentle, but it was firm. His voice was filled with great confidence, as if there were very few things in the world that he could not accomplish. There were very few things that he could not resolve. The light of life immediately returned to Shiyu's eyes when she heard the Shi Emperor's words. It was like she had seen a sliver of light in a world of darkness. She looked at the middle-aged man with great hope and asked urgently, "Can you save Yen?" The Shi Emperor looked at Shiyu gently and said, "Since this person called Yen is so important to you, I'll make her appear before you again, no matter how great of a price I have to pay. As long as I can make you happy, I can do anything for you." Emperor, the two old men who had come with Emperor, she heard what he said at the end. Immediately, the two infinite primes were alarmed. They immediately wanted to warn the Emperor. However, as soon as they said that, Emperor raised his hand to stop them. The two old men looked at each other. Emperor was the current emperor of the Empire. A qualified emperor could not place too much importance on personal matters. He had to prioritize the interests of the imperial family, and he would even sacrifice his own children at certain crucial moments. However, Emperor did not seem to place the interests of the imperial family in his eyes at all. Instead, he prioritized his daughter. As a matter of fact, he had even said that he would do anything for his daughter. As the ruler of an eternal empire, he could never say something like that. As a matter of fact, he could not even think about it. The divine king who stood silently in the distance, as well as the primordial realm experts who had hurried over from the heavenly moon empire, felt very uneasy. A few of them looked at Shiyu and even showed a sliver of envy. If the emperor of an eternal empire, a peak expert who had reached chaotic prime, could make such a promise, just how many people on the cloud plane would be bold enough to provoke this woman called Shiyu in the future? "Senior, can you really say Vienna?" Mo Xingfeng stared at Emperor excitedly as he asked with a trembling voice. Emperor nodded. Although her soul has been destroyed, fortunately, her cultivation is not great, and her soul was not directly dispersed. Instead, it was crushed by the pressure of space, so there are still some fragments left in the world. She only needs a divine king who has condensed a 7-colored flower to save her. As for the radiant god king, the empire happens to have one. With that, the emperor formed a seal with his hand and sent an emperor's decree into the air. It flew towards the empire in the northern region. "Thank you, Senior, for saving my daughter. Thank you, Senior, for saving my daughter." Mo Xingfeng was overjoyed as he thanked Jian Qin repeatedly. She let out a sigh of relief as well. Afterwards, she looked at the 9th prince and the divine kings, and her eyes immediately burned with hatred. She gritted her teeth and said, "The disaster of the clan is all because of them. They all need to die." The empress looked at Shiyu and nodded lovingly. Afterwards, she looked at the 9th prince and the others, and her eyes immediately turned cold. With a flash, the empress had already appeared before a divine king who had come with the 9th prince. She directly extended a finger towards the divine king, sealing up all of his cultivation in a single instance. Afterwards, she tossed the divine king before Shiyu, like a dead dog. From the beginning to the end, the god king did nothing at all. This was because the difference in strength was just too great. Before the empress, a divine king like him was like an ant. I never thought that the empress' strength would be unfathomable as well. She's a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime at the very least. The hearts of the divine king and the infinite primes from the heavenly moon empire leapt when the empress took action. The empress struck out one after another, sealing up all the divine kings the 9th prince had brought with him in a single instance. She tossed them before Shiyu. Even the 9th prince, who possessed a great status in the southern region and was known to be the next emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, was not spared. He was also sealed up mercilessly by the empress and tossed before Shiyu. The 9th prince's face became extremely ugly. He growled, "Emperor, Empress, I am the current prince of the Blood Sun Empire. If you treat me like this, it will probably affect the relationship between our Blood Sun Empire and your dynasty." "Shut up," the empress called out coldly and slapped out again, landing on the 9th prince's other face. The slap sent the 9th prince flying. The other half of the 9th prince's face became a bloody mess. It was no longer possible to distinguish his face. Furthermore, the lower half of his skull had been smashed into smithereens. However, the empress acted as if she had done something insignificant. She did not even glance at the 9th prince. Instead, She turned her gaze toward Shiyu. She was filled with gentleness and love. These people are no longer able to resist. Do you want Mother to take revenge for you? Or do you want to personally execute them? Shiyu said nothing. She stared at the divine kings who had their cultivations sealed up furiously. She could clearly see how arrogant the divine kings were in the Tianyuan family, as if they could rule over everything. Killing intent immediately filled her eyes. She hated the divine kings before her. If it were not for the arrival of Emperor Shi and the Empress, the entire Tianyuan family probably would have been wiped out already. As a result, she wanted to deal with the divine kings personally. She brought her hands together, and a resplendent strand of sword chi slowly condensed between her palms. She was about to stab towards one of them. Emperor Shi, please calm your anger. Please show mercy. At this moment, an old voice boomed out from the sky. It was as tremendous as thunder, echoing through the surroundings. It did not fade away for a very long time. High up in the sky, the space distorted, and suddenly several figures appeared. 2 ruddy old men stood at the very front. Their presences were concealed, making them seem like ordinary people. It was impossible to see through their cultivation. However, when the 2 of them stood there, the entire world seemed to pale in comparison. Even the light of the sun, moon, and stars seemed to dim. Behind the 2 old men was a middle-aged man in a 9 dragons sovereign robe. He had a dignified bearing and looked somewhat similar to the 9th prince. He was the emperor of the eternal Blood Sun Empire, known as the Blood Emperor. Behind Blood Emperor, there were a few experts from the royal family. At the same time, 3 ancient stone towers stood silently in a forbidden ground of the Shi dynasty in the distant northern region. Although the stone towers were not tall, they gave off a feeling that they were connected to the world. Around each stone tower was extremely powerful laws. Hao Xuan, Hao Ming, go to the southern region. No matter what, you can embarrass our Shi Empire. At this moment, an old voice rang out from one of the stone towers. Grand Imperial Ancestor, Ziyun's long-lost daughter. An old voice rang out from another stone pagoda. We've found her, said the person in the first stone tower. Have you found her? We've finally found her. All these years, Ziyun has gone crazy for his daughter. Now, we can finally resolve one of the knots in his heart. The person in the second stone pagoda said, as if he had finally heaved a sigh of relief. The situation this time is rather complicated. With Ziyun's personality, he'll probably cause quite a lot of trouble. The 2 of you can't embarrass our Shi Empire this time, and you have to prevent Ziyun from causing any unmanageable situations. Go, said the voice in the first stone tower. Yes, Ancestral Emperor. The people in the other 2 stone towers replied together. With that, the auras of the 2 stone towers suddenly changed. The towering stone towers immediately became extremely ordinary, and the powerful laws in the surroundings completely vanished as well. The stone towers had already been emptied out. P.S. Please listen to Xiaoyao's prestige. Once there are any updates in the future, Xiaoyao will inform you through prestige. Search. Xingxiao 110. It was not complicated. It was Xiaoyao's pseudonym and a police number. Chapter 1988. In the Dong and province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region, the 9th prince, who had been slapped far away by the empress, finally stopped worrying when he saw the Blood Emperor and the 2 old men before him. As if he had been pardoned, he flew up and arrived behind the Blood Emperor as quickly as he could. However, even though the reinforcements of the Blood Sun Empire had arrived, the 9th prince still seemed like he was running for his life when he saw how frantic he was. It was as if he was afraid that Emperor Shi and the Empress would stop him if he was too slow. This son greets Imperial Father and the 2 retired sage emperors. The 9th prince's expression was extremely respectful as he spoke with great difficulty. After taking 2 slaps from the Empress, his entire chin had been destroyed, so he could no longer speak clearly. The Blood Emperor of the Blood Sun Empire was dignified. He stared at the ninth prince emotionlessly, but there was no pity in his eyes at all. Instead, he said sternly, "Go to the back and stay there." He was straightforward and decisive. "Yes, father." The ninth prince replied politely. He felt very pained. He knew that his status in his father's heart was no longer the same as before after this matter. This filled him with bitterness. He only wanted to find the primordial realm expert who had stolen the Flower of Ways. But he had never thought that he would cause such a great matter. Even the great, holy emperor of the empire had been alarmed. "Emperor," she stared at the two great, holy emperor of the Blood Sun Empire emotionlessly within the Tianyuan family. His eyes were cold as he said, "You finally come. It saves the emperor the trouble of paying a personal visit to the imperial capital of your Blood Sun Empire. However, who do you want the emperor to show mercy to when you talk about showing mercy? Show mercy to the divine kings? Or show mercy to the prince who almost killed the emperor's daughter? Or perhaps you want the emperor to show mercy to your Blood Sun Empire?" Emperor Shi's tone was cold and filled with dense killing intent. Even though the two holy emperor of the Blood Sun Empire were here, he was still extremely domineering. Faced with Emperor Shi's forceful attitude, the two holy emperor of the Blood Sun Empire remained calm. One of them said, "Emperor Shi, please calm down. We have a rough idea of what happened. It is indeed our fault, but fortunately, it has not turned into a grave mistake. Our Blood Sun Empire will compensate Emperor Shi's beloved daughter for the harm she has suffered. I hope, Lord Emperor, she will be magnanimous and not lower yourself to our level." Emperor Shi's face suddenly sank, and his eyes burst out with monstrous, killing intent. He shouted coldly, "When the emperor came here, you had already lost an arm and suffered a very serious injury. There was not much life left in her body. Moreover, the people of your Blood Sun Empire actually dared to defile my daughter when she was so heavily injured. Isn't that a grave mistake? Or do you think that only Yu'er's death is a grave mistake?" Emperor Shi became angrier and angrier as he spoke. At that moment, he seemed like an enraged tiger, filled with bloodlust. The expressions of the two holy emperor of the Blood Sun Empire did not change at all. They looked at Emperor Shi calmly. One of them flipped his hand, and a droplet of green liquid immediately appeared on his hand. It pulsed with a mysterious power. Ever since the droplet of liquid appeared, the souls of everyone present trembled. An indescribable feeling of comfort appeared from the depths of their souls, as if they had ascended to a higher level. Even the Divine King and the primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire were no exception. The invisible pulses from the droplet of liquid could actually affect infinite primes. "It seems to be spiritual marrow of starry skies," an infinite prime from the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire exclaimed. Spiritual marrow of starry skies was something that only existed in legends to infinite primes like them. Just how great a cultivator's future accomplishments and what heights they could reach on the path of cultivation were often related to the cultivator's talent and ability to comprehend. Comprehension was especially important in this regard. Cultivation required the comprehension of battle skills, the mysteries of the world, and the control of the laws of the world. All of this was related to a person's comprehension of the laws of the world. The greater a person's comprehension ability, the faster they could comprehend battle skills, and the easier it would be for them to comprehend the laws of the world. In the vast saints' world, countless people were stuck at reciprocity. They were clearly only a step away from godhood, but they would never be able to reach that step in their entire lives. This did not mean that their talent was lacking. Instead, their comprehension ability was lacking, preventing them from controlling the laws of the world and obtaining the key to godhood. After godhood, each increase in cultivation required a corresponding level of comprehension of the laws of the world. This was more than enough to demonstrate just how important a person's comprehension ability was on the path of cultivation. The spiritual marrow of starry skies just happened to be a supreme treasure that could increase a person's comprehension ability. Even to infinite primes, it was fatally tempting. This was because the increase in comprehension ability from the spiritual marrow of starry skies was not temporary. Like the comprehension tea tree, it was only effective for a certain amount of time. Instead, it was a permanent increase. Even if a person with poor talent consumed a droplet of spiritual marrow of starry skies, they would become a supreme genius with astonishing comprehension ability. Emperor Shi, you must know the value of this droplet of spiritual marrow of starry skies. I wonder if this droplet of spiritual marrow of starry skies can resolve your hatred, said the Holy Emperor of the Blood Sun Empire. However, Emperor Shi did not waver at all. He said coldly, nothing can make up for the harm you has suffered. A debt of blood must be repaid with blood. Emperor Shi was straightforward and decisive. He did not hesitate at all. Afterwards, he looked at Shiyu and said, "You do it. Kill these divine kings. I'd like to see just who dares to stop you." Towards the end, a powerful presence radiated from Emperor Shi, crushing towards the two holy emperors of the Blood Sun Empire in an overwhelming manner. The two grand saint emperors, who had displayed a carefree expression from the start, finally had a slight change in expression at this moment. Both of them frowned slightly. Behind them, the Blood Emperor glanced back slightly at the ninth prince. A sliver of coldness appeared in his dignified eyes, and he sighed inside. He thought, my ninth son has really gone too far this time. Of all the people he could offend, he just had to offend the Emperor Shi of the Shi dynasty. Shiyu hesitated slightly before striking out decisively. She killed off the divine kings mercilessly. The divine kings had their cultivations sealed up by the Empress, so they were unable to dodge Shiyu's attacks at all. They could only watch as death descended upon them. The two holy emperors of the Blood Sun Empire watched on. They did not choose to interfere. They understood Emperor Shi's personality to a certain degree. He was definitely a vicious person who did not care about the big picture and would do anything crazy for his daughter. He had massacred all the primordial realm experts of the Shi dynasty, personally killing all his brothers. That was the best evidence. Even the authoritative Grand Imperial Protector of the Shi Empire had not been able to avoid it. If they intervened to save the divine kings before such a vicious person, a battle between chaotic primes would definitely erupt. Very soon, all the divine kings who had come with the ninth prince were executed by Shiyu. Sword Qi pierced their foreheads, dispersing their souls, wiping out their souls. They did not possess a powerful chaotic body like Jianqin, which allowed them to endure the attacks of overgods without being injured at all. Once their cultivation was sealed, even deities or origin realm cultivators would be able to harm them, let alone overgods. Emperor Shi, are you satisfied now? One of the holy emperors asked after all the divine kings were dead. Hand over the ninth prince, Emperor Shi said emotionlessly. He spoke firmly, leaving no room for negotiation. This time, the two great elders of the Blood Sun Empire struggled to maintain their composure. Their faces changed slightly. Even the current emperor of the Blood Sun Empire, Blood Emperor, who was standing behind them, had a grave expression on his face. Regardless of what crimes the ninth prince had committed, the ninth prince was a direct descendant of the imperial family. He was the Blood Emperor's son. His life might not have mattered, but he represented the Blood Sun Empire. The hearts of the two holy emperors sank as well. They did not care about the ninth prince's death. What they truly cared about was the dignity of the Blood Sun Empire. Chapter 1989. Emperor Shi, we can't hand the current prince over to you. You've killed the divine kings as well, so you've avenged them. We'll use this droplet of spiritual marrow of stars as compensation for the grievances Emperor Shi's daughter has suffered. We'll let this matter go. What do you think, Emperor Shi? Said one of the holy emperors of the Blood Sun Empire. He was also determined, refusing to hand over the ninth prince. if their blood son empire really handed the ninth prince over to be executed just because the She-Emperor's beloved daughter was slightly injured, their status in the southern region would definitely plummet from today onwards. Emperor, she did not accept the offer at all. He snorted coldly. The true culprit behind you, Er's injuries has yet to be dealt with. So how can we avenge them? Blood Sun Empire, Emperor Shi, I only want to ask you one thing. Will you hand over the person or not? Emperor Shi, your daughter is fine now, so why must you force us? Why must you make such a big fuss over such a trivial matter? Why must you do this? Said the Holy Emperor of the Blood Sun Empire. As for the Blood Emperor, he had no right to speak before the two Holy Emperors. My daughter almost died from humiliation here. That's no small matter. Emperor Shi's face sank as killing intent filled his eyes. Afterwards, the presence of a ruler radiated from him. At that moment, he seemed like an overlord. He stared at the people from the Blood Sun Empire coldly and said in a dignified voice, "If you don't hand over the person, my Shi dynasty will declare war on your Blood Sun Empire." Emperor Shi's words were shocking. It was just a short sentence, but it was like a clap of thunder, deeply shocking everyone present. At that moment, whether it was the people from the Tianyuan family, the Divine King, or the primordial realm experts from the Heavenly Moon Empire, they were all shocked. They all looked at Emperor Shi in disbelief. The Shi dynasty and the Blood Sun Empire represented the North region and the South region, respectively. They were both top-notch empires that ruled over their own regions. Once a war broke out between the two eternal empires, it would directly evolve into a war between the two regions. Emperor, she had actually declared war on the Blood Sun dynasty without any regard for the consequences for his beloved daughter. This made everyone in the Blood Sun dynasty pale. Lunatic. This emperor, she is a lawless lunatic. Although his daughter has been slightly injured, she's standing beside him in perfect condition. Yet he wants to declare war on our Blood Sun Empire. Does he not know how severe the consequences of war between two eternal empires will be? The Blood Emperor glared at Emperor Shi as he cursed inside. Probably only the current Emperor Shi of the Shi dynasty could do something so absurd. The two great holy emperors of the Blood Sun Empire became stern as well. The emperors of eternal empires always kept to their word. Since an emperor of an eternal empire had declared war, it was definitely not a joke. Instead, he had really made up his mind. No matter how mentally tough the ninth prince was, he still paled as he stood behind the Blood Emperor. He had never thought that just injuring an over-god from a small clan would lead to a war between two eternal empires. This frightened the ninth prince. As the person who had caused all this, Shiyu stared at Emperor Shi with extremely mixed feelings. She was filled with mixed feelings. Even she was unable to describe what she was feeling right now. As for the members of the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family, it went without saying. Many of them had become dumbfounded. The two ancestral emperors looked at each other as they furrowed their brows tightly. They felt rather troubled when they faced the Shi Emperor, who completely disregarded the big picture and was willing to do anything for his daughter, even going as far as to throw in an eternal empire. Ziyun, don't be impatient. At this moment, an old voice rang out from outer space. With that, the space beside Emperor Shi rippled slightly, and two ruddy old men appeared silently. They were Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming, who had come from the Shi dynasty. They were both great holy emperors of the Shi dynasty. Shi Haoshuan was the father of the current emperor, Shi Ziyun. Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming's appearance did not cause Emperor Shi's expression to change at all. Instead, the Empress immediately became respectful. She pulled Shiyu over and bowed towards Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming first before looking at Shiyu. She said gently, this is your grandfather and great-grandfather. Why don't you greet them? No, he's not worthy to be your grandfather. However, Emperor Shi appeared before Shiyu as soon as the Empress finished speaking. He spoke emotionlessly. A bitter expression immediately appeared on Shi Haoshuan's face when he heard this. He sighed softly before his elderly eyes stared at Shiyu and observed her. His gaze contained some kindness. Ziyun, the matter of declaring war has too many implications. You can't mention it so casually, Shi Haoming said sternly to Emperor Shi. I am the current emperor, as well as one of the holy emperors of the Shi dynasty. I have the right to make decisions. If the Blood Sun Empire refuses to hand over the person, then I can only declare war, Emperor Shi said coldly. He showed no respect to anyone. Shi Haoming also sighed when he saw how determined Emperor Shi was. His face was filled with helplessness. He felt rather helpless against Emperor Shi. As the great holy emperor of the Shi dynasty, they were supreme existences. They represented the supreme authority of an eternal empire. If an emperor dared to disobey them, they could even remove him from his position with a single word. However, Shi Ziyun was rather special. He was so special that even Shi Haoming and Shi Haoshuan, his two seniors, were forced to accommodate him most of the time. Ziyun, let me negotiate with the Blood Sun Empire and try to come up with a perfect solution, Shi Haoming said to Emperor Shi. In the southern region, in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, Jianqin and Kea quickly made their way through a bustling street. They made their way to the very center of the imperial capital. It was closest to the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire, so it was one of the safest places in the southern region. The Blood Sun Empire is the ruler of the southern region. It's the only eternal empire. The imperial capital is of utmost importance to the Blood Sun Empire, so it's naturally forbidden to fight. I hope Huaiyan will fear this place, Jianqin thought. He had become the target of a vice leader of the heavenly demon religion. He felt a great sense of danger at all times. Chapter 1990. After arriving in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, Jianqin considered his next step. Although the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire was the safest place in the southern region right now, it was not a place where he could stay for long. After all, what happened in the Yin Mountains of Seven's despair had already caused him to fall out with the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Coming here meant that he was even closer to the 9th prince. Apart from that, although Huaiyan feared the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, it was only fear. However, if Huaiyan truly dared to act recklessly, the Blood Sun Empire would not be able to do anything to him. After all, the heavenly demon religion behind Huaiyan was supported by an extremely terrifying Great Elder, let alone the eternal Blood Sun Empire. Even the peak clans on the Cloud Plain did not dare to provoke the Great Elder so easily. Apart from the Central region, the other 4 regions probably aren't completely safe on the Cloud Plain right now. Do I have to go to the Central region? Jianqin thought. As soon as the Central region was mentioned, he could not help but think of Tong Tian. Tong Tian's Tong family was also in the Central region. Even now, he still possessed the jade pendant that Tong Tian had given him. No, I definitely can't go to the Central region. The vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huaiyan, has already personally come to hunt me down. It's obvious that he views me as a thorn in his side. If I go to the Central region, he'll definitely pursue me. Once I lead him to the Central region, it'll unknowingly increase the danger Uncle Xiao faces. Uncle Xiao possesses the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the heavenly demon religion has spent countless years refining. This matter is just too great. If the people of the heavenly demon religion learn about it, the consequences will be unthinkable. As a result, I can't go in the end. I can't increase the threat Uncle Xiao poses at all. Jianqin frowned. He discovered that although the Cloud Plain was large, there was actually nowhere he could go right now. This was all because the organization behind Huaiyan was just too great. Otherwise, even though he could move about freely in the southern region with his strength as an infinite prime, he would not be taken seriously by eternal empires. Jianqin, I've heard that there are a total of 49 Great Plains and 81 Great Planets in the Saints' World. Our Cloud Plain is only one of the 49 Great Plains. Since we can't stay on the Cloud Plain anymore, Why do we leave the cloud plane temporarily and return once we have enough strength? Kea said, although she had not been in the saints' world for very long, she already had a basic understanding of the saints' world. She had also learned about the strength of the heavenly demon religion from Genshin. As a result, she understood just how troublesome it was to be targeted by a primordial realm expert from the heavenly demon religion. Kea paused and pondered for a moment before continuing. Moreover, with our cultivation speed, I believe that it won't be long before we possess a cultivation that allows us to not fear Huayan, leave the cloud plane. A sliver of bitterness appeared on Jianshin's face. Leaving the cloud plane was easier said than done. He did not have 5-colored divine crystals to pay for teleportation formations across planes. Teleportation formations across planes were extremely expensive. In the past, Fairy Haoyue had only obtained enough 5-colored divine crystals to support her return home after killing an extremely powerful primordial realm expert in the Xiandao dynasty. Although Jianshin still had some supreme-grade divine crystals from Yasha-Lian, they were still not enough to take teleportation formations across planes after exchanging them for 5-colored divine crystals. At this moment, Jianshin and Kea's expressions both changed. They suddenly looked back and saw 3 strands of surging demonic aura at the end of the busy street. They rapidly approached Jianshin and Kea. What powerful demonic aura! It's people from the heavenly demon religion. It's the Divine King Realm experts of the heavenly demon religion. They've actually come to the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. The heavenly demon religion is just too arrogant. They've come to the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, yet they don't know how to behave themselves. They're basically looking down on the Blood Sun Empire. The arrival of the 3 late Divine King Realm experts of the heavenly demon religion immediately attracted the attention of many people in the imperial capital. However, even though many people looked at the 3 divine kings of the heavenly demon religion with displeasure, no one dared to stand forward, as if they were afraid that others would not know they were part of the heavenly demon religion. The 3 divine kings of the heavenly demon religion did not behave themselves even though they were in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. The late divine kings' presences radiated as demonic aura surged around them. They were enveloped by a dense black mist, making it impossible to see them clearly. At the same time, on a bustling street, several kilometers away from Jianshin, a white-robed young man who seemed to be in his 30s and held a fan in his hand walked around with 2 female attendants in a leisurely manner. When the 3 divine king realm experts of the heavenly demon religion entered the imperial capital, the young man came to a halt. He frowned and said, "The heavenly demon religion is just too arrogant. What do they take the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire for? It's not a place where they can behave atrociously. Your Majesty, from the looks of it, they're probably looking for someone who has offended them. It's just a small matter, so just bear with it. Don't make a big deal out of it," one of the female attendants said softly from behind the young man. The young man's face sank, and he suddenly slammed his fan down. He said, "If we can even bear with something like this, where will the dignity of our imperial family go?" Jianshin and Kea both became stern when they sensed the 3 divine king realm experts in pursuit. Jianshin called out, "They've arrived much faster than I imagined. Look at how they're behaving. They don't seem to take the Blood Sun Empire seriously at all. They'll probably directly attack us in the imperial capital. Let's go." Jianshin immediately flew away with Kea, approaching the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire. However, the 2 of them were unable to fly in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. They could only fly at a low altitude on the streets, so their speed was obviously greatly affected. "Do you think you'll be fine if you escape to the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire? You're far too naive." At this moment, a deep voice rang out from behind. The 3 divine king realm experts from the heavenly demon religion had already locked onto Jianshin's presence. They did not fear Jianshin at all in the imperial capital. Their speed suddenly skyrocketed, and they directly flew through the air. In the blink of an eye, They passed over Jianqin and Kea, landing in front of the two of them, blocking their path. The vice leader has personally ordered for your capture. Even if you run to the ends of the world, you won't be able to escape from the grasp of our heavenly demon religion. Just surrender, sneered one of the divine king realm experts from the heavenly demon religion. With that, he directly attacked Jianqin and Kea. Clearly, he did not want to waste too much time. After all, this was the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. Although their statuses could deter others to a certain extent, it would still be very disadvantageous for them if they wasted too much time. Jianqin and Kea became extremely stern. Jianqin equipped his god artifact as soon as possible and circulated his chaotic force, pushing the defenses of his chaotic body to the limit. Even the cracked, startling rainbow sword appeared in his hand. Heavenly demon religion, you really are getting bolder and bolder. At this moment, a cold snort rang out. With a flash, a white-robed young man with a fan suddenly appeared before Jianqin and Kea. The young man's face did not change at all when he faced the attacks of the three divine king realm experts from the heavenly demon religion. He directly swung his fan forward. Immediately, the wind and clouds in the surroundings surged. It was as if the world had been turned upside down by the young man's fan. The power of laws within the young man's fan seemed to affect the space there, causing it to become rather different. The attacks from the three divine king realm experts from the heavenly demon religion were all repelled without any prior signs when they came in contact with the space there. The attacks that originally targeted Jianqin and Kea were redirected towards them instead. The expressions of the three divine king realm experts changed slightly. However, they were battle-hardened after all. Even though it had happened suddenly, they still managed to react in the shortest amount of time possible. The laws of the divine king realm descended and struck out a second time, nullifying the attacks that had been repelled. Chapter 1991. The young man had nullified the attacks of the three late divine king from the heavenly demon religion all by himself. Moreover, he remained composed and did not seem to be at a disadvantage at all. Clearly, he was extremely powerful. As Jianqin encountered more and more divine kings and clashed with them several times, he had gained some understanding of the strength of a divine king. When the young man struck out, he could clearly sense that he was also a late divine king as he blocked the attacks of the three young men from the heavenly demon religion all by himself. Given that the young man was able to hold his ground against an enemy of the same level of cultivation, he had to be a supreme prodigy as well. The imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire really is filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Just a random person is so powerful. Jianqin was secretly surprised. Demonic aura surged from the three divine king from the heavenly demon religion. Dense, black mist obscured their figures. One of them growled, "Who are you? How dare you get in the way of our heavenly demon religion? Back off immediately and we can let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, you'll be making an enemy of our heavenly demon religion." The heavenly demon religion had always been tyrannical on the Cloud Plain. Even when they came to the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire, they did not hold back at all. They were completely fearless. The young man with the folding fan opened it and slowly fanned himself, nonchalantly. He sneered, "Aren't you looking down on the Blood Sun Empire a little too much? Why don't you take a look at where you are before saying that? How dare you threaten me in my territory? Let alone you three insignificant protectors. Even the vice-patriarch of your heavenly demon religion would have to think twice before coming here." At this moment, a large group of guards from the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire hurried over from the surroundings. Several divine king had also flown out from the imperial palace, approaching with lightning speed. In just a few breaths of time, the three divine kings of the heavenly demon religion were completely surrounded. The several divine kings from the Blood Sun Dynasty's imperial palace all had cold gazes as they trapped the three divine kings. Their powerful auras were slowly being released. Even though they were surrounded, the three protectors of the Empyrean demon cult remained composed. They did not panic at all. One of them said, "The vice leader has personally ordered the capture of these two people. Does your blood sun empire want to protect them? I don't have the slightest interest in who your vice sect leader is arresting. However, this is the imperial capital of the Blood Sun dynasty. It's not a place where you can do as you please. In the southern region, your heavenly demon religion can't cover the sky. Please return, or I'll have to get someone to kick you out of the imperial capital," the young man in white said coldly. After a moment of thought, the three protectors of the heavenly demon religion could only retreat helplessly in the end after coming to a decision about the current situation. After the three protectors of the heavenly demon religion had retreated, Genshin clasped his fist at the young man and said, "I am Genshin. Thank you for your assistance. I will remember your kindness today." Genshin? The young man's eyes immediately narrowed when he heard Genshin's name. He stared at Genshin in some surprise and said, "You're the Genshin who defeated a divine king in the northern region?" "That's me," said Genshin. The young man smiled and studied Genshin. He said, "No wonder the three protectors of the heavenly demon religion pursued you with your cultivation as an overgod. When you captured Yashilian, you made the divine king use her as a hostage, forcing Huai to yield. With Huai An's personality, he'll definitely hold a grudge. Moreover, you're a supreme overgod on the overgod's plaque. Your talent is impressive, so you'll pose quite a threat to the heavenly demon religion in the future. Huayan will definitely move against you. Out of the three vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan is the most narrow-minded and vengeful. If Huayan sets his eyes on you, you need to be careful." When he spoke up to this point, the young man's voice came to an abrupt halt. His eyes stared into the distance as his expression became solemn. He said, "Looks like Huayan values you far more than I expected. He's actually come in person. Genshin, you better leave quickly. As a vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan knows various secret techniques. Coupled with his cultivation as an infinite prime, he can deal with you without breaking the rules of our Blood Sun Empire." Huayan had arrived extremely quickly. Before the young man had even finished speaking, he had appeared on the street silently. He stared at Genshin coldly. Genshin, on the other hand, did not hesitate at all. He left as quickly as he could with Kaya, disappearing from the street in an instant. The young man in white stood before Huayan and said indifferently, "I never thought that the renowned vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan, would personally come to our Blood Sun Empire. I just wonder if our Blood Sun Empire should treat you with courtesy and treat you as an esteemed guest, or should we stand our ground and directly ask you to leave? Vice leader Huayan, you're making things very difficult for me." Huayan was about to chase after Genshin when he saw the young man stand before him. He immediately frowned. Although he did not recognize the young man did not fear him even though he was just a divine king. Coupled with the fact that he mentioned the Blood Sun Empire earlier, Huayan immediately realized that the young man was probably a member of the imperial family, and his status was quite high. However, so what if his status was high? Huayan was the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion. Even the great holy emperor of the Blood Sun Empire had to fear him a little. Huayan immediately snorted coldly and said, "We're here to capture a criminal, so we don't have the time to tangle with you. Leave immediately, or don't blame us for being merciless." As he said that, the pressure of a primordial realm expert radiated from Huayan, pressing towards the young man. "Huayan, this is the Blood Sun Empire, not your heavenly demon religion. If you continue to act so recklessly, I can only chase you out of the imperial city." Just when Huayan released the pressure of the primordial realm, a loud and clear voice rang out from the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire. "Humph. I naturally know the rules of your Blood Sun Empire. My visit this time has nothing to do with your Blood Sun Empire. As long as you don't get in my way, I naturally won't break the rules of your Blood Sun Empire," Huayan replied coldly. He no longer paid any more attention to the young man, vanishing with a flash as he chased after Jianchen. The young man stared in the direction that Huayan had vanished in, and a sliver of reluctance appeared in his eyes. He said to the imperial palace, "Imperial advisor, that Jianchen is a prodigy of our southern region after all. He'll definitely become an expert who reigns supreme in the future. Are we supposed to just watch as Jianchen is framed by the heavenly demon religion and do nothing about it? There are countless prodigies in the saints' world, and there are even quite a few unprecedented figures. However, just how many of them can reach the apex in the end? Even if they're first on the Overgod's plaque or first on the Divine King's throne, there are still examples of them dying along the way. There's no need to offend the heavenly demon religion over something like this." The deep and clear voice rang out once again from the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire, but only the young man could hear it. At this moment, Jianchen and Kea moved through the imperial palace quickly. They did their best to increase the distance between them and Huayan as they thought about how to deal with the situation. However, at this moment, Jianchen and Kea both stopped. They looked ahead. A ruddy old man in white robes stood before them. He stared at Jianchen and Kea with a strange light in his eyes. "Qianlong, why are you here?" Kea asked. He was surprised. The old man was Master Qianlong, who had some conflicts with Jianchen in the past. However, when the 7 protectors of the Earth Spirit sect killed their way into the provincial city, Jianchen felt grateful towards Master Qianlong for protecting Kea. As a result, Jianchen's grievances towards Master Qianlong gradually dissipated. Jianchen was extremely surprised to see Qianlong here. Master Qianlong became extremely stern. He said sternly, "I know you're in extremely great trouble. Don't say anything right now. Come with me." Before he had even finished speaking, Master Qianlong turned around and left. Jianchen and Kea looked at each other. Although they had no idea what Master Qianlong was planning, they clearly had no other choice right now. They could only follow behind Master Qianlong. Under Qianlong's lead, Jianchen's group arrived at an extremely huge square in the imperial capital very soon. Just the square was several dozen kilometers wide, and there was a sea of people gathered there. The most eye-catching thing was that at the very center of the square, there was an extremely huge flying artifact parked there. It was several dozen kilometers long and several tens of thousands of meters tall. It was like a towering mountain floating in the air, almost filling up the entire square. Just a glance at it gave off an extremely powerful sense of oppression. "Take this and board the ship with me. As long as you board the spatial battleship, we'll be safe for now." Master Qianlong passed a jade talisman to Kea and Jianchen before flying towards the spatial battleship with them. A spatial battleship? A sliver of doubt appeared in Jianchen's eyes. He glanced at the colossal flying vehicle and flew towards the spatial battleship with Qianlong in confusion. At a time like this, he no longer cared about the uses of the spatial battleship. As long as he could shake off the pursuit of an infinite prime, he would go even if he had to go through a sea of flames. "Jianchen, stay behind!" Just when Jianchen was about to board the spatial battleship, a thunderous bellow boomed in his head. Terrifying sound waves echoed through Jianchen's head, shaking up Jianchen's soul to the point where it almost collapsed. His consciousness became blurry, and the chaotic force within him paused at that moment. He almost fell out of the sky. Vice Leader Huayan had already hurried over from behind. He stared at Jianchen with a sunken face. When Kea saw this, he immediately grabbed Jianchen's shoulder and flew towards the cabin door of the spatial battleship. "Don't even think about leaving the cloud plane." Huayan's face was ashen. At that moment, he no longer cared about breaking the rules of the Blood Sun Empire. With a raise of his hand, he reached towards Jianchen from afar. As he extended his hand, his entire arm elongated. His hand turned into a black cloud, blotting out the surroundings and trapping space. It enveloped Jianchen and Kea. Chapter 1992. This was the second time Huaiyan had attacked Jianqin and Kea. The first time, he had only struck out casually. He did not actually want to injure Jianqin and Kea. Instead, he only wanted to draw out the hidden Divine King. As a result, Jianqin and Kea were still able to fight back then. Even though their attacks were as insignificant as ants to primordial realm experts, they could still fight back at the very least. However, this time, when Huaiyan saw Jianqin and Kea were about to enter the spatial battleship, he directly struck out furiously in a moment of panic after understanding how powerful the spatial battleship was. The strike was so powerful that it completely surpassed the first time he had attacked Jianqin and Kea. Just the tremendous pressure from the strike was enough to immobilize Kea and Jianqin. Master Qianlong's expression suddenly changed as well. He wanted to save Kea, but there was nothing he could do when a primordial realm expert personally took action. Huaiyan, you're looking down on the Blood Sun Empire far too much. It looks like it's time for your heavenly demon religion's arrogance to be quelled. At this moment, an old voice rang out. A red-robed old man appeared silently above the spatial battleship. Even though the old man had concealed his presence, making it impossible to see through his cultivation or detect his existence, when he appeared in the sky, it was as if he had become one with the sky. The old man stared at Huaiyan coldly. He raised his right hand calmly and extended a finger towards the huge hand that reached towards Jianqin and Kea. The finger seemed very simple. It did not give off any ripples of energy, nor did it give off any pressure. However, the space before the old man suddenly shrank as he extended his finger. A spatial ripple spread out at an unbelievable speed. Huaiyan's huge hand suddenly came to a halt when it was only 10 meters away from Jianqin and Kea. The surrounding space seemed to freeze at that moment. However, the power of the old man's finger clearly did not stop there. In the next moment, the space there shattered loudly with a violent pulse. A huge spatial crack appeared, and countless spatial blades and violent spatial storms surged out in all directions, enveloping Huaiyan's hand. The spatial blades and spatial storms were extremely terrifying. They possessed terrifying offensive power, and Huaiyan's hand was reduced to a bloody mess in the blink of an eye. Huaiyan's eyes were icy cold as he stared at the old man without any expression. His right hand had been trapped by the old man, enduring the attacks of the spatial blades and spatial storms. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to free his hand from the space that had been trapped. However, he ignored his right hand soon after. He looked at Jianqin, and his killing intent immediately skyrocketed. With a thought, a sword immediately appeared above his head. It was completely red, as if it had been drenched in blood. As soon as it appeared, it gave off an extremely heavy smell of blood. Vaguely, it seemed to be able to hear the roars of countless vengeful spirits and the struggles of countless vengeful spirits. Clearly, the sword had been stained with an unknown amount of blood. It had completely transformed into a demonic armament. Swish! As soon as the red sword appeared, it turned into a red bolt of lightning. It directly tore through space and shot toward Jianqin with unbelievable speed. Huaiyan's killing intent towards Jianqin had reached a limit. Now that Jianqin was about to step onto a spatial battleship and leave the cloud plane, how could he let him go? As a result, he basically wanted to kill Jianqin at all costs, even if it meant offending the eternal Blood Sun Empire, even if it meant losing an arm. The red sword moved extremely quickly, so quickly that it seemed like space did not exist before it. In a flash, it appeared before Jianqin and shot toward Jianqin's head with a monstrous smell of blood. However, it was also at this moment that the space around Jianqin and Kea trembled slightly. On the line between life and death, Jianqin and Kea vanished, causing the blood-red sword to miss. Huaiyan glanced at the huge cabin door of the spatial battleship slightly. He saw that Jianqin and Kea had silently appeared outside and were about to enter. This person is a serious criminal of our heavenly demon religion. He is involved in a major matter that has happened recently. If you stop me, you will become an enemy of our heavenly demon religion. We will definitely report this matter. Once the Great Elder is alerted, your Blood Sun Empire will not be able to bear the consequences. Huayan roared out furiously. With a thought, the blood-red sword flashed and continued towards Jianqin. He was not afraid of actually killing Jianqin. His demonic armament possessed the ability to suck away souls. Anyone killed by the sword could choose whether to directly obliterate their souls through his will. As long as Jianqin was injured by the sword, even if it was just a scratch, his demonic armament could suck away Jianqin's soul in a single instance. The red-robed old man was unfazed by Huayan's threat. He said, "Do you think you can scare the old man by bringing up the Great Elder of your heavenly demon religion? What's even more laughable is that a mere over-god can alert the Great Elder who rarely shows himself. Huayan, don't you think your words are rather childish and laughable?" As he said that, the old man reached out with his hand. With that, the entire world seemed to be in his grasp. The blood-red sword that shot towards Jianqin silently appeared in the old man's hand as well. The old man gripped the sword with 2 fingers. No matter how the sword struggled, it was unable to break free from the old man's grasp. At this moment, Kea had already grabbed Jianqin by the shoulder and entered the cabin with Chanlong. They vanished from Huayan's sight. Huayan's face was terrifyingly sunken. He understood the power of the spatial battleship very well. Once Jianqin entered the spatial battleship, it would mean that he had lost the opportunity to kill Jianqin unless Jianqin came out of there. As the spatial battleship moved through the endless space, it would naturally encounter various dangers. It could even be attacked by extremely powerful space beasts. Chapter 1993. As for tailing the spatial battleship and waiting for Jianqin to disembark before killing him, that was even more impossible. This was because once the spatial battleship entered outer space, even 9th heavenly layer infinite primes would not be able to catch up to it. Probably only chaotic primes would be able to keep up with the spatial battleship. After all, this was a transportation tool used to cross the 49 Great Plains and 81 Great Planets of the Saints' world. It was naturally extremely fast. Outside the spatial battleship, Huayan stared at Jianqin, who had already vanished into the cabin with a sunken face. His hatred for the red-robed old man who had stopped him reached the limit. If it were not for the fact that the red-robed old man had stopped him time and time again, Jianqin would have ended up in his hands already. Unfortunately, even though they were both infinite primes, he was nowhere near as powerful as the red-robed old man. As a result, he could only bury his hatred deep inside. "Huayan, leave the imperial capital immediately," said the red-robed old man. His indifferent voice was cold. The Empyrean demon cult was an existence that many organizations on the cloud plane detested. If it were not for the fact that they feared the mysterious and terrifying Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult, it would have been impossible for the Empyrean demon cult to still exist after what they had done on the cloud plane. Only now did Huayan pull back his right hand. His entire right hand had vanished. However, he ignored the wound on his right arm. He glanced at the red-robed old man emotionlessly before snorting coldly. He directly left. He had already lost the chance to kill Jianqin. At this moment, Jianqin's soul that had been shaken up by Huayan's thunderous roar gradually recovered. Under Master Chanlong's lead, he moved through the spatial battleship before finally stopping in an extremely large cabin. This cabin was clearly located at the bottom of the spatial battleship. Several hundred stone platforms the size of cushions were placed in an orderly manner in the cabin. Currently, quite a few people were seated on the stone platforms. As for Jianqin and Kea, they were led by Master Chanlong to 3 of the stone platforms. "What is this place?" Jianqin looked around in confusion. Master Chanlong sat on the stone platform beside Jianqin. He said to Jianqin and Kea secretly, "This is a spatial battleship. It's an extremely famous, large-scale transportation tool in the Saint's world. It's specially used for interplanar travel. Although there are teleportation formations that can cross the distance between planes in the Saint's world, it's extremely expensive. Even some primordial realm experts can't afford it. On the other hand, spatial battleships are much cheaper than interplanar teleportation formations. Even some gods can afford it. The only downside is that it's much slower than using teleportation formations. If you use teleportation formations to cross planes, you can reach your destination in an extremely short amount of time, no matter how far apart the planes are. On the other hand, spatial battleships will take years, decades, or even centuries or millennia to reach their destination. Master Chanlong clearly had an extremely detailed understanding of spatial battleships. He explained to Jianqin and Kea from one side. When Jianqin learnt that he was about to leave the cloud plane on the spatial battleship, he fell silent. His mind was heavy, and his face was filled with worry. Everything had happened too suddenly. He was still unprepared. In particular, the Tianyuan family filled him with worry. This was because Ruijin, Honglian, Blackfish, Nubi, Siyu, and the others who had come up with him from the Tianyuan continent were still with the Tianyuan family. Now, I can only hope that the Divine King can protect the Tianyuan family, Genshin thought as his heart filled with bitterness. He had never thought that Huayan, one of the vice leaders of the heavenly demon religion, a great primordial realm expert, would personally hunt down a mere over-god like him. He was indeed powerless against the pursuit of a primordial realm expert with his current strength. As a matter of fact, even fleeing was an extravagant hope. If it were not for the fact that Huayan was kept busy by the experts of the Blood Sun Empire, he would not even have been able to set foot on the spatial battleship. I have no choice but to leave this time. Huayan, I will return. Genshin clenched his fists as his gaze became extremely piercing. At the same time, not only was the central region of the Cloud Plain the center of the entire plain, but it was also the most prosperous place on the Cloud Plain. Most of the peak organizations that stood at the apex of the Cloud Plain resided in the central region. Moreover, the only everlasting empire on the Cloud Plain resided in the central region. At this moment, the red-robed Houston fled in horrible shape in a desolate region of the central region. He was covered in wounds, and every single one of them was vicious and terrifying. Blood constantly flowed from them as he faced the merciless pursuit of over a dozen Divine King. Behind him, the Divine King stared at Houston with burning desire. They pursued Houston as they fought against the Divine King beside them. All of them wanted to approach Houston first, but none of them wanted to be faster than the people beside them. Once they reached the very front, they would be mercilessly attacked by the people beside them or the people behind them. As a result, even though there were over a dozen Divine King pursuing an overgod, none of them were able to catch up to Houston due to the people beside them. This god artifact is fated to be mine. All of you piss off. If anyone dares to stop me, I'll definitely visit them one by one once this is over. The Divine King bellowed out, furiously. The eyes of many of them had turned red. Houston's god artifact made their hearts beat faster. They were so excited that their blood began to boil. God artifacts were things that even many primordial realm experts did not possess. To the Divine King, the temptation was fatal. Up ahead, Houston constantly coughed up blood. After coming to the central region, he originally wanted to find a secluded place to cultivate, but he had never thought that he would come across a powerful, vicious beast in the wilderness, forcing him to use Amagami to deal with it. It was also at this moment that Amagami happened to be discovered by a Divine King who passed by. He became greedy and exposed Houston's god artifact. Houston was not the Divine King's opponent at all. If it were not for Amagami's assistance, he probably would not even be able to flee. As a result, he fled with Amagami's assistance. Faced with the pursuit of a Divine King, he had to rely on Amagami's assistance, or he probably would have ended up in the Divine King's hands long ago.